the Strongest Sect. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101 Natural Born Sniper. 88 sniper rifle is really strong. Zyouzuji fired a shot, and even with the tripod, he was still blown away more than 10 meters and hanged himself. However, there are 2 points that surprised Jun Changxiao. First, this guy is very accurate. Second, after resting for a while, he stood up, as if nothing had happened. My cultivation is higher than his, but I was shocked and rested for most of the night before I adjusted. The system explained, that's because the host fired 3 shots in a row, and the recoil was extremely large, while he only fired 1 shot. So that's it. Jun Changxiao suddenly realized. In any case, Zyouzuji's shooting talent and strong body still made him more determined to train him into a sniper. Zuji, Jun Changxiao said with a smile, this Type 88 sniper rifle is yours. Try to get a feel for it when you have time. Yes. Zyouzuji picked up the gun. Although he felt a little cold on his back when he thought of the recoil just now, his eyes were hot when he saw the broken stone. It is a man's nature to love guns. Even men from another world are no exception. Next, Zyouzuji would take 2 hours every day to lie alone on the grass, rocks, and trees in the back mountain, with one eye resting on the lens, aiming at something in the distance. He had never fired a gun, because the head said that there were only 6 bullets left in the gun. In order to better adapt to the recoil, Zyouzuji would also stand in the martial arts field and let his senior brothers hit him with thick wood. Junior brother, are you ready? Step. Zyouzuji took a step, exposing his upper body, patted his right shoulder, where the gun was, and said, senior brothers, come on. Go. Suzuyama gave an order, and 10 disciples holding wooden stakes came over fiercely, but with a bang, they knocked him out. The muscle shaping machine is based on science to temper the body and maximize muscle improvement, and this method is quite extreme. Swish. Zyouzuji climbed up and returned to his previous position. He stood in horse stance again and said while enduring the pain, come again. Bang. Come again. Bang. Again. Come again. On the steps of the main hall, watching Zyouzuji fall down and stand up again and again, Li Qingyang said, Master, junior brother Zyou wants to become stronger too much. Jun Changxiao leaned his arms on the stone railing and said, Qingyang, although your junior brother has won the championship of the sect competition and proved himself with strength, you still have your former fiancé to surpass. Li Qingyang said solemnly, Master, as far as I know, junior brother Zyou's fiancé is named Mirengzin, and she is a direct descendant of the Mireng family, one of the 4 major families in Qianhe County. Qianhe County? Jun Changxiao had some impression. It seemed to be a county with a large population. He said, is the Mireng family very strong? Li Qingyang was silent for a moment and said, if we calculate according to the level of the sect, the Mireng family of Qianhe County is at least not weaker than the Kangshan sect. Jun Changxiao was surprised and said, so awesome? Li Qingyang said, Mirengzin has a top grade spiritual root and was accepted as a personal disciple by the 11th elder of the second-rate sect, the Holy Lily sect. Jun Changxiao didn't care about the top grade spiritual roots, but cared about the Holy Lily sect. The name really has a connotation. He joked, is there a gay sect? Gay sect? Li Qingyang scratched his head and said, disciple has never heard of it. Jun Changxiao got back to the point and said, a family comparable to a 5th-rate sect, and he is a disciple of a 2nd-rate sect. This Mirengzin is really not simple. But, he touched his chin and said, since she is so outstanding, how could she be engaged to Zuji? Arranged marriage. Li Qingyang said. Jun Chang smiled and said, no wonder. Looking at Zyouzuji who was training, he murmured, it's probably very difficult for my disciple to surpass the woman who abandoned him. Difficulty is challenging. Only then can it prove the strength of training disciples. Mirengzin of the Mireng family. Wait, one day, I will let you understand how stupid it was to regret the marriage. The craftsmen in the inner courtyard were building in full swing, and the disciples were also practicing. 7 days passed peacefully, and the Tegu sect ushered in a historic moment. That is, except for Xiao Zuji and the newly joined Liu Wanxi and Yi Xingchen, all other disciples broke through to the 12th stage. Shan Qi, Li Fei, Zhang Wei and others even entered the martial arts apprentices, increasing the number from 5 to 10. Under normal circumstances, a 9-stream sect would be considered good if it had 3 or 5 martial arts apprentices. The Tegu sect had 10, which was undoubtedly quite tough. That's strange. Jun Changxiao opened the data panel and saw that the sect's level was always 9th rate. He was puzzled and said, the sect has 9 disciples who have reached the level of martial arts apprentices, and most of the rest have opened their meridians at the 12th level. Why haven't they upgraded yet? The system said, the sect's level upgrade is not decided by the system. It needs to be certified by the relevant departments of the Xinjiang continent before it can be upgraded. Which department? You can ask the disciples. Jun Changxiao called Li Qingyang over. Li Qingyang said, Master, as far as I know, if you want to upgrade your sect from the 9th rate to the 8th rate, you need to go to the Sect Certification Center for certification. Sect Certification Center? Where is it? Qingyang City. How is the certification method? Li Qingyang thought about it for a while and said uncertainly, it seems that you can take disciples who meet the realm requirements to get certified. It's really troublesome. I'm too lazy to go. Jun Changxiao gave up the idea of going for certification. In his opinion, as long as the sect has strong strength, it doesn't matter, even if it is regarded as the 9th rate. In the weeds in the back mountain, Xiao Zuji was covered with weeds, with only a pair of eyes exposed, and the whole person lay motionless. Swish. After a long time, a large wild boar walked out more than 600 meters ahead. Xiao Zuji lowered his head slightly, put one eye on the lens, locked the wild boar's head with his crotches, and then pulled the trigger. Bang, the gunshot rang out. Xiao Zuji was holding the gun, and was shocked, and slid 2 meters away. As for the wild boar, it was accurately shot in the head, and fell to the ground. Suzaomo ran over, picked it up, and said, Xiao Junior brother, your shooting is really accurate. Huh. Xiao Zuji stood up, holding the gun in one hand, rubbing his right shoulder that was numb from the shock with the other hand, and a bright smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. In 7 days, after experiencing the shaping room and extreme physical training, he was no longer like the first time he fired a gun, and was no longer killed by the recoil bullet. Not bad, not bad. Jun Changxiao clapped his hands and walked out. Xiao Zuji lay on the ground for 2 hours, motionless, and quickly shot the prey in the head after it appeared. He is definitely a natural sniper. This is the advantage of a genius. Even if he is not good at martial arts, he still performs well in other things. Zuji. Jun Chang smiled and said, when the sentry tower is built, the responsibility of protecting the sect will be handed over to you. This guy gave Xiao Zuji a Type 88 sniper rifle and asked him to become a sniper, hoping to protect the sect and prevent others from getting close. Although there is a large formation to protect the sect, after all, 1 point of contribution value a day is not enough for years. If a sniper is placed in the sentry tower, and a suspicious person or killer is found and killed instantly, it would be very comfortable. Yes, Xiao Zuji said. But, he said weakly, Master, there are only 5 magic bullets. Jun Chang smiled, and held his chin, saying, yes, the bullets are a bit low. I have to go to Qingyang City, to buy some crystal cores. Qingyang. Notify the disciples who have broken through the martial arts apprentice to follow me to the Qingyang City Sect Certification Hall tomorrow. Since I'm going to Qingyang City, I must go to the certification on the way. P.S. Thanks to the evil ghost, 181 ************** 59, and defense for the reward. A new day to ask for votes. Chapter 102 Difficulties in Certification. The next day, Jun Changxiao took Lu Qian, Li Qingyang and others to Qingyang City. Xiao Zuji also came with him. The 88 type sniper rifle he carried on his back was wrapped in black cloth, giving people a very mysterious feeling. Snipers must always pay attention to the surrounding environment and cannot relax at all. Jun Changxiao said. Yeah. Xiao Zuji was absolutely vigilant all the way. Even if a hare occasionally ran through the bushes, he could catch it in the first time. He had accepted the positioning of a sniper, but lacked more bullets for shooting training. The talent of a genius is important, but to really achieve a perfect shot, you still need bullets to feed your hand. A few hours later, a group of people came to Qingyang City. As soon as they entered, they attracted the attention of the people in the city. The contempt and ridicule in their eyes were naturally replaced by respect and awe. During this period, the performance of the Iron Bone School has long been recognized. As Jun Changxiao said, vulgar people like to follow the trend. When you are weak, you wish everyone would come and kick you. When you are strong, you wish you could come and kneel down and lick. Where is the sect certification? In the south of the city. Walking along the wide street to the south of the city, Jun Changxiao led his disciples to stop in front of a building with a sign sect certification hall. Why is the Tegu sect here? Does it want to certify the sect level? Although Sect Master Jun defeated the leader of the Changdao sect on the stage of enmity, it is not enough to be strong personally. The disciples must be strong to pass the certification. The sect certification hall has a cooperative relationship with the 100 Races Alliance. The Tegu sect has left the alliance, and it may be difficult to get certification. Hearing the comments of passers-by, Jun Changxiao frowned and thought to himself, the certification hall and the 100 Races Alliance actually have a cooperative relationship. It is bound to be difficult to get certification. Sure enough, after entering the certification hall and announcing the name of the sect, the steward said calmly, according to the sect certification rules, you must show the certificate of the 100 Sects Alliance before you can be certified. Bang! Suzaomo slammed the table and said angrily, we are all here, why don't you just certify us? Why do you need a certificate? The steward said calmly, this is the sect certification hall, an authoritative institution of justice and fairness in the Xinjiang continent. Sect Master Jun, please let your disciples be respectful. What a fair and just thing. If Jun Changxiao hadn't taken into account his status as the sect master, he would have taken out the historical records and hit him hard in the face. No certificate, no certification? He said calmly. The deacon said calmly, if there is a certificate of recommendation from a 5th rate or above sect, certification can also be carried out. Of course, for a low-level sect like your Tegu sect, that hasn't even joined the 100 Races Alliance, there will be no recommendation from a big sect, so you'd better go back to where you came from. Fuck. Li Fei couldn't help, but slammed the table and said, if you say the word low level again, believe it or not, I will kick you to death. Except for a few who have some status, most of the disciples who joined the Tegu sect are from poor backgrounds. They will definitely swear when they are humiliated, and their own sect is humiliated. The steward folded his hands and sneered, what? Are you from the Tegu sect going to cause trouble at the certification hall? Jun Changxiao signaled the angry disciples to calm down and said, I would like to ask, what are the conditions for certifying an 8th rate sect? The steward glanced at the Tegu sect disciples who thought they were a group of bumpkins, and said lightly, 5 martial arts disciples, 5 disciples who have opened their meridians at the 12th level. Jun Changxiao understood and said, goodbye. Watching the Tegu sect leave, the steward said disdainfully, after withdrawing from the 100 Sects Alliance, he still wants to certify the sect's level. Is this guy stupid? Master, that guy is deliberately making things difficult for our Tegu sect. Suzaomo gritted her teeth as she walked out of the certification hall. If you don't want to certify, then don't certify. You're fucking humiliating us. Shinki was so angry that his body was shaking. Li Qingyang said calmly, the sect certification hall is related to the 100 Sects Alliance. If we want our sect to improve, we can only go to other counties for certification. It doesn't matter. Jun Changxiao said. We came to Qingyang City to buy bullets, and the certification thing is just a side job. Since the other party is deliberately making things difficult, the worst that can happen is that they won't certify him. Anyway, it's enough for the sect to be an 8th rate sect. Master Jun. At this moment, a vigorous and deep voice came from a distance. Jun Changxiao turned around and looked, and said in surprise, Eldamar. Yes. The person who came was Eldamar of Kangshan sect. Judging from the aura emanating from his body, he had obviously broken through to the martial arts sect. He had been stuck at the peak martial arts master for a long time. Jun Changxiao's guidance on the mind method 2 months ago made him suddenly enlightened, and finally successfully took that step. Elder Ma stopped in front of him, bowed his hands, and said in gratitude, "Thanks to Master Jun's previous guidance, I was able to enter the martial arts sect." Martial arts sect? Li Qingyang and others looked at him with envy and respect. In Qingyang County, those who reached the martial arts master level were among the best masters, and martial arts sects were undoubtedly the ones to look up to. Jun Changxiao said modestly, "Elder Ma is a person who is in a difficult position. As long as the confusion is solved, even without Jun, it will be easy to enter a higher level." Elder Ma's eyes were full of admiration. When recruiting the 100 sects, he felt that this boy was full of nonsense, but now it seems that he is a humble little guy. What? Looking at the sect certification hall, Elder Ma said, "Master Jun wants to certify the sect's level?" "Yes," Jun Changxiao said. Elder Ma glanced at the disciples of the Iron Bone Sect behind him, and seeing the aura they exuded, he bowed and smiled. "Congratulations on your sect's promotion to the 8th level." Jun Changxiao shook his head and said helplessly, "If they don't give certification, how can you be happy?" "Not giving certification?" Elder Ma was surprised and said, "What do you mean?" The sect certification hall is an authoritative institution in the Xinjiang continent. Any sect can go in for certification. This is the first time he has heard of not giving certification. Jun Changxiao told the matter one by one. After learning about this, Elder Ma said in a deep voice, "The 100 Sects Alliance is just a private organization. It is ridiculous that they can ask the sect certification center to provide certification. Master Jun, let's go." He made a gesture of invitation and said, "I will take your sect to get certification." Jun Changxiao led his disciples into the certification center again. The deacon stood up and said with a stern face, "Master Jun, why are you here again?" "To get a sect certification," Jun Changxiao said. The deacon rolled his eyelids and said unhappily, "I have made it very clear that, if you want to get certification, you must either show the 100 Sects Alliance certificate, or have a 5th rate." Deacon Zhao. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Elder Ma, who walked in and said, "Ma, on behalf of the Kangshan sect, recommends the Tigu Zhengzheng sect to you. This should comply with the certification rules, right, Elder Ma?" Seeing the elder of the Kangshan sect come in, Deacon Zhao hurriedly walked out of the counter and smiled politely. "How come you have time to come to the certification center?" His face changed so quickly. Suzaomo, Shinki and others looked down on this kind of servile and flattering person. Elder Ma said indifferently, "Deacon Zhao, if I remember correctly, you have been a deacon for 10 years. Yes, yes." Deacon Zhao smiled and said, "Exactly 10 years. Elder Ma's eyes turned cold and said, "Deacon Zhao is also a veteran. I would like to ask, if the sect comes for certification, it needs to provide a certificate of a local private organization. Has the Certification General Alliance authorized it?" This. Deacon Zhao's face changed drastically. He only represents the Qingyang County Sect Certification Hall, and cooperating with the 100 Sects Alliance to get benefits is a personal behavior, and the higher-ups definitely don't know. Jun Chang smiled and said, hearing what Elder Ma said, "I have to suspect that Deacon Zhao and the 100 Sects Alliance may have some ulterior motives for a dirty deal. P.S. Thanks to 135 **********62 Ziyang and Usher Huanel for the rewards. Now the reader fan value is 81. Please reward. Please recommend." Chapter 103 Shocked Elder Ma. Deacon Zhao's forehead was covered with cold sweat, and he was no longer as arrogant and indifferent as before. If he made an agreement with the 100 Sects Alliance without authorization and the news of receiving benefits spread to the headquarters, he would lose his position as a deacon, but being held accountable would be a big deal. Deacon Zhao realized in a short time that the arrival of the elders of the Kangshan sect was related to Jun Changxiao, so he hurriedly smiled and said, "Master Jun, Zhao will certify you and the Tigu sect now." No, no, no. Jun Changxiao said, "My Tigu sect is just a low-level sect, and we don't have a certificate from the 100 Sects Alliance. How can we be qualified to certify a sect?" Deacon Zhao's face turned as ugly as if he had eaten a fly when he heard this. Elder Ma said coldly, as the person in charge of the sect certification hall, shouldn't you follow fairness and justice? It's ridiculous that the 100 Sects Alliance needs to provide a certificate. The last 5 words were so sonorous and powerful that Deacon Zao's heart trembled and his calves began to spin. This is a 5th-rate Kangshan sect elder. Not to mention reporting the matter to the headquarters. Even if it is reported to the branch, his fate will be miserable. Seeing this guy pale with fear, Jun Chang smiled secretly. If I don't step on you like a dog, how can I be worthy of my angry disciples? Pa. Suddenly, Deacon Zao raised his palm and really hit him in the face and said with a flattering smile, Master Jun, my brain was just squeezed by the door. You are generous, don't be angry with me. Is this okay? Li Qingyang and others twitched at the corners of their mouths. If he still acted as proud as before, maybe he could get a little respect. Now he has become a dog wagging its tail, which is disgusting to watch. Deacon Zao, be gentle. Jun Chang smiled lightly. Pa. Deacon Zao slapped himself in the face again, this time with full force, and a bright red palm print appeared on his right cheek. He endured the burning pain and forced a smile and said, Master Jun, are you satisfied? Not satisfied. Jun Chang smiled. Pa. Deacon Zao was also a ruthless character. He slapped him on both sides of his face. Because he used too much force, his nose was bleeding. Master Jun, Master Jun. He smiled with a slightly ferocious face. Are you satisfied? The other person was so sincere in the fight, Jun Changxiao couldn't target him anymore, so he said lightly, go through the procedures and get certified. Please. Deacon Zao injured the pain and took him and the Iron Bone school disciples to the backyard martial arts field, where a stone with flowing light was placed. Master Jun, this is a cultivation test stone. Please certify it one by one. If you meet the requirements, you can upgrade the level of your sect. What requirements? 5 disciples reach a strength value of more than 2,300 kilograms. Oh. Jun Changxiao understood. This so-called cultivation test stone is actually the same as a strength test machine sold in the mall. Li Fei, go and test it. Yes. Li Fei came over first, but scratched his head and said, Master, should we use fists or feet? Deacon Zao, who covered his face, said, whether it's hands or feet, as long as the strength reaches 2,300 kilograms, it will be considered to meet the requirements. Understood. Li Fei raised his feet and kicked it suddenly, which was similar to kicking a happy football. Bang, a kick hit the test stone. Elder Ma, who followed, commented secretly, the chassis is solid and no spiritual power is used. It must have been trained hard. The strength of this kick must have reached. Gap suddenly stopped thinking, and his eyes were full of surprise because the test stone gradually showed a number, which was 3,000 kilograms. This. Deacon Zao was also dumbfounded. As the person in charge of the Qingyang City Sect Certification Hall, he has seen many sect disciples come to verify their strength, but he has never seen anyone who can kick out 3,000 kilograms with just the flesh. Li Fei shook his head and said, I'm a little uncomfortable. Xiaomo. Yes. Su Xiaomo walked forward, and he also kicked, exerting a force of 3,500 kilograms, then shrugged and said helplessly, sure enough, I'm a little uncomfortable. Elder Ma and Deacon Zao twitched at the corners of their mouths. The 2 disciples each kicked, and the purest physical strength could be comparable to that of a second-grade martial artist. This was incredible. Lu Qian, who came on stage next, gently hit the test stone with her jade palm, and the force displayed was 4,000 kilograms. This looked very casual, and he didn't use his full strength. Li Qingyang walked up, poured spiritual power into his fist, and suddenly slammed it on the test stone, and the power value that emerged was 5,000 kilograms. Bang! Shanqi also hit the test stone without using his spiritual power. His punch was worth 3,200 Jin. Elder Ma and Deacon Zao's eyes widened. These disciples of the Tigu sect, whose strength was only that of a first-grade martial artist, could each exert a force of more than 3,000 Jin. It was simply terrifying. Deacon Zao. Jun Chang smiled and said, 5 disciples of my sect have met the requirements. Can we certify it as an 8th-rate sect? Deacon Zhao came to his senses and hurriedly said politely, according to the certification regulations, your sect must have 5 disciples who have reached the 12th stage of opening meridians. Oh. Jun Chang smiled and waved his hand. Zhang Wei and the other 3 martial artist disciples were tested in order. The results showed that their strengths were all above 3000 Jin without exception. Except for Lu Kaiyan Qian and Li Qingyang, the disciples of the Tegu sect were of middle grade spiritual roots. They could exert a very close strength value. Naturally, it was also due to training and body shaping pills. Elder Ma and Deacon Zhao were a little dizzy. Very few disciples can hit the strength value of a second grade martial artist, which can be explained by innate divine power. So many disciples can hit the value of 3000 Jin. Could it be that all of them are innate divine power? Not innate, but acquired. Master Jun. Elder Ma looked at Zhao Zuji and said, aren't you going to test this disciple? Jun Chang smiled and said, Zuji, go up and punch, show it to Elder Ma. Yes. Zhao Zuji handed the sniper rifle wrapped in cloth to Su Zhao Mu, walked to the test stone, then took a deep breath and punched it. Strength value, 4600 Jin. Elder Ma suddenly widened his eyes and opened his mouth, with shock in his eyes. This boy has no spiritual power emanating from his body, and the purest physical strength can hit a strength value of nearly 5000. This is absolutely terrifying. Ziji. Deacon Zhao remembered something and said in surprise, could it be that he is Zhao Zuji, the direct descendant of the Zhao family who won the sect competition? Jun Changxiao said lightly, please remove direct descendant of the Zhao family and replace it with a disciple of the Tegu sect. Thank you. I understand. I understand. Deacon Zhao said hurriedly. Elder Ma exclaimed, so he is the champion of the sect competition that just ended not long ago. No wonder he is so strong. He also heard about the fact that the disciples of the Tegu sect took the top 4 places in the sect competition in Strongest Sect, and he had discussed it with the head and the senior leaders. Master Jun. Elder Ma bowed and said, these people, under your guidance, have become dragons among men. To be honest, not to flatter. After all, a group of disciples with generally low qualifications can be brought to such a level by the head of the Tegu sect, which is difficult even for his Strongest Sect. Not only Strongest Sect, but also higher sects. It is impossible to bring a group of mediocre people to become just first-class martial artists and have a higher level of combat effectiveness. Of course, high-level sects would not accept them either, because it was a complete waste of time and resources. Jun Changxiao thought differently. He had to bring all these disciples who were regarded as waste and garbage by the high-level sects into the pride of heaven, because it was very challenging. Chapter 104, Stirring Up a Hornet's Nest. The requirement for a sect to become an 8th-rate sect is to have 5 martial arts disciples and 5 disciples who have opened their meridians to the 12th level. The disciples brought by Jun Changxiao, even Zhao Zuji, who has no cultivation, have all exerted power far beyond the minimum standard, so it is a piece of cake to pass the certification. Master Jun. On the counter, Deacon Zhao handed over a token engraved with the word 8 and said with a trembling smile, congratulations on your sect's promotion to the 8th rate. Now even if there is no elder from the Strongest Sect standing there, he will still be respectful. After all, the strength shown by a group of disciples is too fierce. The future of the Tegu sect is probably limitless. Ding. Congratulations to the host for upgrading the sect to the 8th rate, and you will be rewarded with 100 achievement points and 200 contribution points. Ding. Sect achievement value. 100 over 500. Ding. Sect contribution value. 355 over 500. Oh my. The sect level is upgraded, and achievement points and contribution points are also given. Jun Changxiao was pleasantly surprised. In fact, the first time he heard that a sect needed certification, he refused. Now that he has obtained achievement points and contribution points, it feels great. The system said, the higher the sect level, the higher the reward. Jun Changxiao's eyes became hot and he said, Deacon Zhao, what are the conditions for upgrading from the 8th stream to the 7th stream? Deacon Zhao hurriedly said, the sect leader needs to be a martial artist, and there must be at least 50 disciples and 500 disciples with 12th level meridians. So many? Jun Changxiao frowned. The sect's upper limit of disciples is only 500. It seems that, if you want to upgrade to the 7th stream, you must not only improve the overall cultivation of the disciples, but also upgrade the construction to level 3. The 9th stream on the system panel was changed to 8th stream. Sect leader Jun obtained 100 achievement points and 200 contribution points, and walked out of the certification hall in a good mood. 8th stream sect token. Oh my god, the Tegu sect was promoted. Incredible, incredible. Passersby saw the 8th stream sect token hanging on Jun Changxiao's waist, and their eyes were all shocked. More than 2 months ago, the Tegu sect was just an obscure trash sect in the eyes of the world. The first generation of the sect leader was beheaded for visiting a brothel, and became a laughingstock. Just a few dozen days later, under the leadership of the second generation of the sect leader, it not only expanded rapidly, but also moved from the 9th rate to the 8th rate, which really made many people feel unreal, and like a dream. Master Jun, the elder of the Kangshan sect, bowed and said, "Ma has something to deal with. If you have time in the future, please come to my Kangshan sect to have a chat." It sounded like a polite remark, but many warriors were envious. After all, not everyone is qualified to hear such polite words from a 5th-rate sect elder. Jun Changxiao bowed and said, "I will definitely visit Kangshan sect when I'm free someday. Goodbye." Goodbye. Elder Ma left, but on the way he thought to himself, this boy's really extraordinary to be able to bring a group of ordinary teenagers to such a level. If I see you again someday, this Iron Bone Sect will probably become even stronger. Elder Ma would definitely not underestimate a group of disciples who could produce such a terrifying power value. After the sect certification, Jun Changxiao took his disciples to the market and entered a crystal core store to start selecting crystal cores of various qualities. Considering that the higher the level of the crystal core, the greater the recoil generated by the bullet fired, he focused on the crystal cores of the 4th and 5th grades. After a selection, Jun Changxiao selected 2 crystal cores of the 7th grade, which were similar to the crystal core of the Earth Flame Wolf King, and 50 crystal cores of the 5th grade. The shopkeeper said with a smile, "Master Jun, 2 low-grade 7th grade crystal cores, 20,000 teals, 50 low-grade 5th grade crystal cores, 150,000 teals, a total of 170,000 teals. Oh my god, so expensive?" The disciples who followed in widened their eyes. 170,000 teals. For them, they had never dreamed of it. Jun Changxiao took out the banknotes, slammed them on the counter and said, "Buy it." Seeing so much money, the disciples of the Tegu sect felt dizzy and secretly said, "Our master is really rich." After buying the elixir, Jun Changxiao went to the medicinal material market again, but only found a few healing pills, so he took the disciples back to the sect. On the way, he unloaded the bullets from the 88 type sniper rifle, loaded them into the crystal core of the Earth Flame Wolf King again, and reloaded 10 bullets with the low-grade 5th grade crystal core. Arriving at an uninhabited place, Jun Changxiao pointed at the hornet's nest hanging on the tree in front and said, "Zuji, shoot it down." Yes. Xiao Zuji found a spot, propped up the tripod, and then held the gun to calibrate the target. During this process, Li Qingyang and others had retreated more than 10 meters away. Sect Master Jun also retreated, and secretly said, "The low 5th grade replaced the low 7th grade, and the recoil should not be too great." Bang, while thinking, Xiao Zuji, who had checked, decisively pulled the trigger, and a stream of light spurted out of the muzzle, and then smashed the hornet's nest with incomparable accuracy. Judging from the sound of the gun and the stream of light, it was obviously not as good as the bullet condensed by the low 7th grade. Definitely, the higher the level of the crystal core, the stronger the condensed bullet. Although the power was much weaker, the recoil generated only knocked Xiao Zuji half a meter away, and there was only a slight numbness in his shoulder. Lu Qian said lightly, "The power of this attack, even a 7th or 8th grade martial artist with full spiritual power may not be able to withstand it." Really? Jun Changxiao smiled with satisfaction. Not bad, not bad. Xiao Zuji stood up, rubbed his shoulders, grinned and said, "Master, I will adapt for a while, and it should be fine." At this point, the smile suddenly froze. What happened? Jun Changxiao and the disciples followed his gaze. They saw a group of wasps gathered at the broken wasp nest, their bodies flashing red light, and a buzzing sound came. Not good. Li Qingyang said in surprise, "It's a poisonous wasp." Poisonous wasp. A small gregarious beast, although low level, but the power of group attack is very strong. Not to mention martial artists, even martial artists may not dare to provoke it. As soon as Li Qingyang opened his mouth, the head of Junda had already stretched out his long legs and ran forward, shouting, "Why are you still standing there like an idiot? Run!" Swish, swish. The disciples hurriedly followed. Buzz. The swarm of poisonous wasps rushed over. The stingers were exposed, and the little eyes were full of anger. Ouch. Shanqi screamed, "My butt." Li Fei was chased by dozens of poisonous wasps, and ran around holding his head. He even released his spiritual power to isolate the attack, but was still hit by the all-pervasive stingers. Suzaomo ran the fastest. However, the flying poisonous wasps could actually shoot out poisonous needles, which instantly pierced his butt, and he screamed out. Dusk came. The group returned to the sect. Except for Lu Kai and Qian, all the other disciples were stung by poisonous wasps. Especially Xiao Zuji, his lips were stung and swollen like 2 sausages. Jun Changxiao was also stung, and it was on his eyelids. The bulging bumps almost squeezed his eyes into a line. "Master." Li Qingyang covered his stung butt and said in a breakdown, next time, don't let junior brother Xiao hit a hornet's nest. P.S. Thanks to, asterisk, holding wine but not knowing who to drink with. 181 asterisk 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 52. G. Dongfeng does not disappoint the original heart, lies, and speechless rewards. Please recommend votes. Chapter 105. He comes with bad intentions. After having enough crystal cores, Xiao Zuji spent more time practicing shooting, after returning to the sect, and even laying the grass in the back mountain all night, waiting for animals to appear at night. Hitting a stationary target is nothing, and the real way to show your shooting skills is to hit a moving target. Bang, bang. Occasionally, gunshots rang out in the back mountain late at night. In the study, Jun Changxiao, who was not in the mood to sleep, continued to refresh them all. Now he has 355 contribution points, which can be used to spend for a while. Ding. Contribution value. 345 over 500. After refreshing, an item called Magic Modification Shoulder Pad appeared in the displayed products. Click on the details. Item, Magic Modification Shoulder Pad. Effect. After wearing it, it can form a defense for the shoulder, which can greatly offset the recoil caused by the magic modified rifle and sniper rifle. Time limit. Use it as soon as you wear it. Price. 20 contribution points. Jun Changxiao murmured. Offset recoil? This is a good thing. Don't consider it, just buy it directly. Ding. The host spent 20 contribution points and obtained the magic modification, Shoulder Guard X1, which has been transferred to the space ring. Ding. Sect contribution value. 325 over 500. Jun Changxiao continued to refresh, but his luck was very bad. He didn't get any good things. He was forced to spend 10 contribution points to buy an extreme jump rope. Refresh again. Ding. Contribution value 295 over 500. The goods that appeared this time were good. There was a common high-level martial art called Explosive Fist. Although the level was low, the Tegu sect was in urgent need of various martial arts, so Jun Changxiao still spent 10 contribution points to buy it. Ding. Contribution value. 285 over 500. Ding. It was detected that the host purchased a fist martial art from the mall, and it was automatically matched to the sect's skills. The sect's skills on the system data panel had the words Explosive Fist, common high level, which meant that the disciples could practice it. Jun Changxiao copied 1000 copies and murmured, "You can practice with more than 10 meridians. I will give them to the disciples tomorrow." The next day, under the influence of the divine song, the disciples happily finished their morning exercises, and then each of them received a copy of the Explosion Fist secret book, which made them even happier. Jun Changxiao gave the magic modification, Shoulder Guard to Xiao Zuji and the extreme skipping rope to Suzaomo. "Thank you, master," the two said. Zyrozuji put on the shoulder guard that fit tightly to his shoulders and came to the back mountain. He held up the 88 type sniper rifle and pulled the trigger, but after hearing a bang, his body only trembled and did not retreat. So powerful? He widened his eyes. As he said that, he stood up, retracted the tripod, and then held up the gun and said, "It should be okay to shoot while standing, right?" Bang, he pulled the trigger again, and the moment the bullet flew out, Zyrozuji was shocked and retreated several meters away, then staggered to stabilize his body, grinning and said, "It hurts." Without the support of the tripod, the recoil of the Type 88 sniper rifle must be greater. Fortunately, there is a magic shoulder guard, otherwise, I'm afraid I will hang myself again after one shot. In the martial arts field, Suzuyomo took the extreme skipping rope and said, "Master, you gave me this thing, do you want me to skip rope?" Swish. As he spoke, he jumped down. Then his arms turned uncontrollably, and his feet shook uncontrollably. Swish, swish, swish. The speed increased, and the light and shadow flickered. Oh my god. The disciples surrounded him and said in surprise, "Senior brother Su jumps so fast." After half an hour, the frequency of skipping rope decreased and then stopped. Plop. Suzuyomo's legs trembled and she collapsed to the ground, rolling her eyes and spitting white foam from her mouth. The purpose of extreme rope skipping is to exercise leg strength. Once you jump up, it will force the user to jump wildly for an hour, just as damaging as a muscle building machine. The disciples continued to practice as usual. Jun Changxiao was also immersed in practice and couldn't extricate himself. Occasionally, he took a key gathering pill to increase the speed of spiritual power intake. A few days later, the realm has moved from the 7th level to the 8th level. If you encounter a beast of the level of the Earth Flame Wolf King again, you don't need to use a gun at all. You can tear it to pieces with your bare hands. In the training room, Jun Changxiao concentrated his spiritual power on his right arm and used the explosive fist he had comprehended, hitting the test machine with a bang, and the power value displayed was 23,000 kilograms. TSK. It's actually increased by 3,000 Jun. He broke through to the 8th grade martial artist. He didn't rely on spiritual power, and his physical strength was about 20,000. Using the explosive fist increased it by 3,000 Jun. The system said, this is only the ordinary level. If there are higher martial arts, the host's strength value will increase. Jun Changxiao also wanted to practice advanced martial arts, but it depends on luck to get it. Bang. Suddenly, gunshots came from the outer courtyard. Jun Changxiao hurriedly walked out and saw a wisp of green smoke coming out of the muzzle of the 88 type sniper rifle mounted on the newly built sentry tower. "What's going on?" he said in a deep voice. Zyrozuji stood on the sentry tower and pointed to the position where the muzzle was facing and said, "Master, a man in black tried to sneak in and was shot by the disciple." Jun Changxiao hurried out of the sect. Sure enough, a few hundred meters away, he saw a man in black lying on the grass. His chest was pierced, blood was flowing, and he couldn't be deader. The assassin was in high-speed movement and was shot dead by Zyrozuji, which shows that his shooting skills are very accurate. It's a pity that the side quest was not triggered. Jun Changxiao shook his head, searched the other party's space ring, and burned it with exquisite fire. Xiao Tower, you are really diligent. With Zyrozuji on guard, Jun Changxiao didn't have to open the sect protection formation every night, which could save a little contribution value. Master. The next day, Li Qingyang came to see him and said, 4 more junior brothers have broken through to martial arts disciples in the past few days. I have distributed my secret book of killing to them. How is Xingqian's cultivation? Jun Changxiao said. As the leader of a sect, he must care about the growth of every disciple. Li Qingyang said, yesterday I saw junior brother Yi taking a test in the training room. There were 7 lights flashing on his wrist. He should have broken through to the 7th stage of opening meridians. So fast? Jun Changxiao was quite surprised. Calculating the time, Yi Xingqian joined the Tegu sect for less than a month, and he advanced from the 1st stage of opening meridians to the 7th stage of opening meridians, which is much faster than other disciples. Li Qingyang said solemnly, Master, junior brother Yi is not simple. Jun Changxiao touched his nose and said with a smile, This man's eyes are vicissitudes, as if he has experienced a lot of things, so I forced him to be my disciple. Li Qingyang said, junior brother Yi is a loner, and he doesn't get along with many junior brothers. I'm worried that he will be restless when he becomes stronger. Jun Changxiao clasped his 10 fingers together and said with a smile, don't worry, even if that guy breaks through to the martial emperor, I can subdue him. As the leader of a sect, if you can't deal with the troublesome disciples, what's the point of being a master? Just commit suicide and end it. Master. At this moment, Suzaomo ran in, panting. Someone is visiting outside, saying it's Mirengzin from the Mireng family. What? Jun Changxiao and Li Qingyang were surprised. We discussed her a few days ago, but I never thought she would come today. Is it because of Xiao Ziji? The visitor is not kind. Jun Changxiao frowned. P.S. Thank Dongfeng for living up to his original aspirations, waiting, fulfilling his wishes, and a mango for the reward. Chapter 106 added deadline. Outside the sect, stood a 16-year-old girl in blue, with skin as white as snow, a slender figure, an oval face, willow-shaped eyebrows, and a noble aura. In terms of appearance and temperament, she is not inferior to Lu Qian at all. Mirengzin, a direct descendant of the Mireng family in Xianhe City. Possessing the best spiritual roots, she is the direct disciple of the 11th elder of the Lily Holy Sect. Another identity is that she is Xiao Zuji's ex-fiancée. This kind of proud girl with both beauty and talent appeared in front of the mountain gate of the Tegu sect, which was unexpected. Mirengzin gently raised her head, picked up the black hair in front of her forehead, and looked at the man standing on the sentry post in the distance with a pair of starry eyes, and murmured, it's him. Some time ago, she returned to Xianhe City to visit her relatives. She heard that her ex-fiancé participated in the Qingyang County sect competition, and won the sect championship. When she returned to the sect this time, she deliberately stopped by to take a look. Xiao Zuji was also looking at Mirengzin, and said with a gloomy face, why is this woman here? The memory of 5 years ago appeared. It was in the hall of the Xiao family, in front of all the clan members, accompanied by the elders of the Holy Lily sect. Mirengzin said lightly, I'm here to cancel the engagement. The 6 cold and arrogant words were like sharp arrows that pierced Xiao Zuji's heart deeply, causing him pain every time he thought of them during his 5 years of wandering. Xiao Zuji had no feelings for his former fiancé. After all, they were engaged when they were young, and they only met once when they were young. But a woman came to cancel the engagement, and in public, which was undoubtedly equivalent to trampling on his dignity. He could accept that the genius became a waste. He could also accept being expelled from the family. He could not accept that when he was in trouble, even his fiancé would come to kick him and completely drive him into the abyss. Seeing Mirengzin again, thinking of her arrogant face, Xiao Zuji really wanted to move the muzzle of the Type 88 sniper rifle over and then pull the trigger. Creaky. At this moment, the red-painted door opened, and Suzaomo waved her hand and said, Miss Mireng, please come in. Mirengzin frowned and said, won't your head of the family come to greet me personally? There was arrogance in her voice. She had the right to be arrogant. After all, as a direct descendant of the Mireng family, when she came to the territory of Qingyang County, the leaders of various factions would line the streets to welcome her. Even the 5th-rate Kangshan sect would give way to the Holy Lily sect. Oh my. This woman is quite arrogant. Suzaomo said unhappily, Miss Mireng, you are just a direct descendant of the Mireng family. Why should my head of the family come to greet you personally? The head of the family and the head of the family have the same status. It is fine for the head of the family not to come out to greet the direct descendant of the family. It is very proper. Are you going in? Suzaomo said impatiently, if you don't come in, I'll close the door. Humph. Mirengzin snorted coldly and walked in, anger flashing between her brows, thinking to herself, a 9th-rate sect really takes itself seriously. After walking in, she saw the spacious outer courtyard in the magnificent hall. A trace of surprise flashed across her bright eyes, and she said, this Tegu sect is quite impressive. It's just. She looked at the disciples practicing in the martial arts field and said disdainfully, with mediocre qualifications and low cultivation, no matter how luxurious the sect is, it is still just a low-level existence. From the arrogant behavior of this woman, it is enough to prove that Jun Changxiao's guess was right. The visitor is not friendly. Hall. Miranxin walked in and saw the young man in white at the top. She said calmly, "Are you the leader of the Tegu sect?" "Yes." Jun Changxiao rested his elbows on the armrest, clasped his fingers together, and said with a smile, "I have heard that my disciple has a beautiful fiancée. Today, I see that she is indeed worthy of her reputation." Li Qingyang's mouth twitched. "My leader, you mentioned the word fiancée. Aren't you deliberately provoking her?" Sure enough, Miranxin's pretty face suddenly turned cold, and she said, "Master Jun, I'm no longer engaged with Xiao Zuji. Please don't joke about it." "Yes, yes." Jun Changxiao slapped his forehead, pretending to remember, and said, "I forgot that my disciple and Miss Mirang are no longer engaged. Alas, I'm old and my memory is not good. Embarrassingly poor acting. Miss Mirang." Jun Chang smiled and got back to the point. "Why did you come to my Tegu sect this time?" "Nothing." Miranxin said lightly. "I just heard that Master Jun's disciples won the top 4 places in the sect's martial arts competition, so I came here to see what's special." Jun Chang smiled and said, "I see. Qingyang, call your junior brother Xiao over and let him accompany Miss Mirang to take a good tour of the Tegu sect." Li Qingyang was a little overwhelmed. "Master." Xiao Zuji appeared at the door of the hall and said, "The disciple is here. In the back mountain, in the peach forest." Miranxin stood in front of a peach tree, and her white fingers gently plucked the peach blossoms on the branches. Xiao Zuji squatted on a stone, wrapped in a black cloth, and placed next to him, so that he would never leave the gun. The woman was extremely beautiful, and the man was handsome, like a match made in heaven. What a pity. Under the beautiful scene, there was a solemn atmosphere. After a long time, Miranxin put his hands behind his back, looked at Xiao Zuji, and said, "You haven't opened your pulse yet?" His tone was much calmer, without the previous arrogance. Xiao Zuji said calmly, "Miss Mirang, whether I opened my meridians or not doesn't seem to have anything to do with you, right?" Miranxin was silent for a moment, then changed the subject and said, "I told Grandpa that I wanted to cancel the engagement, but he disagreed, so don't blame me for taking the initiative to go to the Xiao family to cancel the engagement." And she paused and said, "I really didn't know that your spiritual roots and cultivation would regress, and I didn't know your situation in the Xiao family at that time." Xiao Zuji said calmly, "It happened a long time ago. You don't need to explain to me." Miranxin picked a peach blossom, flicked the petals and said, "In the past 5 years, others have believed that I, Miranxin, went to your Xiao family to cancel the engagement because my fiancé had lost his qualifications and cultivation." As he said that, he threw a bottle of pills and said, "There are 10 Changmei pills that increase the chance of opening the meridians. Just consider it as compensation for my impulsiveness when I was young. Are you pitying me?" Xiao Zuji said. Miranxin was silent. Xiao Zuji said self-deprecatingly, "Miranxin is a daughter of heaven, and I, Xiao Zuji, am just a waste now. Naturally, I cannot reach her. Please take the Changmei pill with you." Swish, a happy football shot over and hit him directly in the face, and then Jun Changxiao's scolding came, "Be strong for me." Swish. Xiao Zuji stood up, clenched his fists, and said word by word, "Miranxin, the humiliation you gave me 5 years ago, sooner or later, I, Xiao Zuji, will go to the Holy Lily sect to get it back. Add a deadline." Jun Changxiao's voice came. 10 years. Too long. 9. Okay, that's 3 years. Xiao Zuji. Miranxin lifted her black hair and smiled. "In 3 years, will you come to the Holy Lily sect to find me?" "Yes." Xiao Zuji said with a cold look. "In 3 years, I will take the divorce letter to the Holy Lily sect and tell everyone that it was me, Xiao Zuji, who divorced you, not you, Miranxin, who broke off the engagement." Miranxin was stunned. She saw an unprecedented determination in the man's eyes, even when they first met, and he was still a genius. He had never seen it before. 3 years. Miranxin said lightly, "Okay, I'll wait for you in the Holy Lily sect." After saying that, he turned and left. The broken peach blossoms floated in the air, and the petals gradually separated in the air, as if to represent that the couple who were once made in heaven had completely parted ways today. Miss Murin. Jun Changxiao's voice echoed in the back mountain. I'm sorry I can't see you off. Chapter 107 Xiao Zuji, open the pulse. Mirinzin left, and the K-Maple left behind seemed to be regretful for her impulsiveness, or out of pity. Xiao Zuji placed it on the stone. He didn't plan to take it, because he didn't want to accept the gift of a woman who had hurt him. Jun Changxiao walked over, put the pill into the space ring without any hesitation, and said, 3 years, practice hard. Master. Xiao Zuji said, I have nothing to do with her. Do I have to go to the Lily Holy Sect in 3 years? Jun Changxiao patted his shoulder and said, Zuji, you are fighting for your dignity now, not to prove that you will be better than her in the future, but to tell her that what you have lost must be taken back by yourself. Lost things. Xiao Zuji murmured. What did he lose? Dignity. A man's dignity. Xiao Zuji clenched his fists and said with a firm look, Master, I understand. I will work hard to practice, not to prove that I'm better than others, but to take back what I have lost by myself. Work hard, young man. Jun Changxiao said. Back in the hall, he leaned back in his chair and said, Zuji, the agreement between you and Mirinzin is actually a spurring you to keep getting stronger. I hope you won't let me down. Helping the disciple to make a 3-year agreement, although there is a suspicion of going to slap him in the face, it is more of a goal for him to constantly strive for. For example, to become a rich man, you have to make 100 million first. Hey. Jun Changxiao stretched and said, training disciples is really not an easy task. While speaking, he took out the K-Maple and murmured, can it increase the chance of opening the meridians? This pill seems to be very good. The system said, the host can decompose and refine it from the alchemy pavilion, or get the recipe of the pill. There is this function. Jun Changxiao hurriedly opened the system data panel, and clicked on the alchemy pavilion. Below the 4 pills, a line of words appeared out of thin air. The content is K-Maple decomposable. Decompose. Ding. The host decomposes the pill, consuming 10 contribution points. Ding. Contribution value of the sect. 265/500. Sure enough, as long as the system's kind reminder, you have to spend some contribution points. Ding. Decomposition successful. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the recipe of the meridian opening pill. The meridian opening pill appeared on the panel of the alchemy pavilion. After clicking in, 4 kinds of medicinal materials were presented. Jun Changxiao touched his nose and smiled. With 10 contribution points, I can decompose the recipe of the meridian opening pill. This wave is a sure win. The addition of the meridian opening pill in the alchemy pavilion is equivalent to another step of perfection. Of course, materials are needed to refine it, so Jun Changxiao decided to go to Huang City in 2 days. At present, the more important thing is how to open Zuji's meridians. After all, the strength of the physical body has its limits. Xiao Zuji must open his meridians, and must gather spiritual power to go further. Otherwise, he will carry a gun all day to fight with others? It's not impossible. But if there is spiritual power to assist, it will naturally be like a tiger with wings. Jun Changxiao held his chin and said, we must understand the condition that prevents this kid from practicing. That's right. We can buy a qualification transformation liquid and let him take it, forcibly upgrading from low-grade spiritual roots to ordinary spiritual roots. Maybe the main meridian will be opened? Jun Changxiao did it as soon as he thought of it. He directly clicked on the qualification transformation liquid suitable for low-grade spiritual roots. Ding. The host consumes 50 contribution points and obtains qualification transformation liquid X1, which has been transferred to the space ring. Ding. Contribution value of the sect. 215/500. In order to make his disciples stronger and to regain the lost dignity in 3 years, Sect Master Jun is really working hard. Training room. Xiao Zuji took the qualification transformation liquid, and when he learned the effect, he was stunned on the spot. After a long time, he said in disbelief, Master, if you drink it, can it really improve your spiritual root qualifications? Jun Changxiao said with a smile, don't talk nonsense, drink it quickly. Pop. Zyrozuji opened the bottle stopper, raised his head without hesitation, and drank the malt-flavored medicine. The meridians in his body seemed to burn. Huff, huff, huff. He took a deep breath, and the exposed skin gradually turned red, like a red-hot charcoal. What's going on? Jun Changxiao was stunned. He had drunk several bottles, and this situation had never occurred. Could it be that this kid had an allergic reaction after drinking it? The system said, this is the qualification transformation liquid that is condensing spiritual power to help him improve his spiritual roots and gather the spiritual energy of the Chang meridian. Zzz. At this moment, Zyrozuji's red skin began to emit a strange mist, which smelled a bit pungent. The system said, this is poison gas. Poison gas? Jun Changxiao took 2 steps back cautiously. The system said, if I'm not mistaken, your disciple should be poisoned. Poisoned? Jun Changxiao said solemnly, could this be the reason why he can't practice? The poison in Zyrozuji's body spread and filled the training room. Fortunately, it was just choking and did not cause any harm. Jun Changxiao touched his chin and said, there are toxins in the body and I can't practice. Things seem to be very clear. Bang. At this moment, Zyrozuji's body made a sound, and a slightly weak halo gathered at the wrists of both hands. This is the symptom of opening the meridians. Plop, plop. Zyrozuji's heart beat violently, shaking his chest up and down. The spreading poison seemed to be gradually evaporated under the hot body temperature. As for the halo, gathered in both wrists, it also evolved from fuzzy to clear, and finally solidified. A meridian has been opened. Jun Changxiao said happily. As soon as he finished speaking, a second halo appeared on Zyrozuji's wrist again. Obviously, the spiritual energy gathered in his body has opened the second main meridian. Half an hour later, the poisonous gas in the training room completely dissipated, and everything returned to calm. Zyrozuji was as tall as a mountain, and 4 bright lights gathered on his left and right wrists. After taking the qualification transformation liquid, his spiritual roots were upgraded from low grade to ordinary. The improvement of qualifications drove the meridians, and broke through to the 4th stage of opening meridians in one fell swoop. Master. Looking at the spiritual energy halo that had not appeared for 5 years, Zyrozuji's hands trembled violently, and his voice was almost hoarse. Brother. Disciples' meridians have been opened. Not bad. Jun Chang smiled and said, you have opened your meridians. Zyrozuji closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to control his emotions, but tears still gathered in his eyes uncontrollably. Swish. Suddenly, his knees bent down. But before he knelt down, Jun Changxiao held him up and said, use your future strength to promote the power of Strongest Sect, which will be the best way to thank me. Stand up. Swish. Zyrozuji straightened his bent knees, wiped the tears from his cheeks, and said loudly, disciple Zyrozuji will never let the master down. In the future, I will strengthen the name of Strongest Sect, and promote the power of Strongest Sect. Jun Changxiao patted him on the shoulder and said, I'm counting on you. Ding. The first 100 disciples have successfully opened their meridians. Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden task, 100 feet of pole, and obtaining 50 contribution points. Ding. Contribution value to the sect. 265 over 500. Jun Changxiao walked out of the training room and said speechlessly, the first 100 disciples have successfully opened their meridians? If Zyrozuji hadn't opened his meridians, would he have never been able to complete it? The system said, yes. This hidden task is really fucked up. P.S. Thank you for, if I become a demon, there is no Buddha in the world. Nothing is difficult in the world, as long as you are willing to give up. And the tips from passers-by, and also thanks to the readers, who have always voted for the most powerful sect, which made the number of recommended votes reach 10,000 this week. Exclamation mark. Chapter 108 The Strange Crazy Old Man. Although Zyrozuji's meridians were opened, Jun Changxiao was puzzled as to whether it was because of poisoning that caused his realm to regress, and made it impossible to gather spiritual power. The system said, from the poison gas just now, it should be caused by poisoning. Jun Changxiao held his chin and said, it is understandable that the poison can cause the realm to regress, but how can the top grade spiritual roots regress? If the toxins in the body can suppress the spiritual roots, now that they have been dissolved, they should be restored, not just opening 4 meridians. He rubbed his temples and said, Yuan Fang, what do you think about this system? Jun Changxiao said, I'm asking you, talk. The system then realized that Yuan Fang was referring to himself, so it said, Xinjiang continent is a magical world. Maybe there is a poison that can suppress cultivation and spiritual roots. The toxin has been dissolved. Why didn't the spiritual roots and cultivation recover? Jun Changxiao said. The system was silent for a while and said, perhaps there is not only one toxin in his body. The host has only dissolved the toxin that suppresses cultivation, and there is still a toxin that suppresses spiritual roots. It's possible. Jun Changxiao fell silent. If that was the case, who was so vicious that he used 2 kinds of poison to destroy Xiao Zuji, who was supposed to be a genius? The elders of the Xiao family? Jun Changxiao thought of the elders of the Xiao family who were full of murderous intent towards Xiao Zuji during the sect competition. And who sent those assassins outside Liang City? He held his head and said, damn, I feel that my IQ is a bit insufficient. Yuan Fang, do you have any products that can develop brain power? The system said, no. After Xiao Zuji successfully opened his meridians, he temporarily gave up practicing guns and ran the Yijinjing all night. The spiritual power around him began to gather. Although he only had ordinary spiritual roots and his absorption was far inferior to the top spiritual roots he had in the past, he was very satisfied. After all, it was much better than not being able to condense spiritual power. The spiritual power merged into his body, spread and gathered along the meridians, and Xiao Zuji once again found the refreshing feeling he had when he practiced. Of course, he also knew that everything was given by the head of the sect. He was willing to serve the Tigos sect willingly in this life. Lily Holy Sect? In another disciple's room, Yi Xingchen finished his training and said disdainfully, when this emperor dominated the Xinjiang continent, it was only a 5th-rate sect. Alas. Our Lord Yidi is still immersed in the past and can't come out. Huh. He exhaled and murmured, the Taixuan Sutra is really profound. I have been comprehending it for so long and only comprehended the 1st level. Fortunately, I have the help of Yijin Sutra, otherwise it would be difficult for me to break through to the 7th level of opening meridians in such a short time with just one kind of mental method. I really have to thank him very much, because without the 50% opening rate of Yijin Sutra, with Yida's current qualifications, it would take a long time to achieve it. It's not enough to practice blindly. It must be combined with actual combat. Let's go to the mountains and forests with fierce beasts to train tomorrow. The next day, Yidi told Jun Changxiao his idea. After thinking it over again and again, the latter said, go with your senior brother Xiao, so that you can take care of him. Him? Just a piece of trash. Although Yi Xingchen was very resistant, he still agreed on the surface. After all, he was now a disciple of the Tegu sect. Just like that, a strong man was reborn, and a genius became a waste. They set out to leave the sect, and began the indispensable outdoor training that should belong to the protagonist. Xiao Zuji went with a Type 88 sniper rifle. Not only did he have to practice in actual combat, but he also had to take the opportunity to hunt for crystal cores, to make up for the loss of the sect leader's previous expenses. Arjunda sect leader handed over the affairs of the sect to Li Qingyang and set off for Huang City. Sect leader Liu Wanshi stood at the door of the cafeteria and shouted, bring back some condiments. Understood. When Jun Changxiao came to Huang City again, he found that it was much more lively than last time, and occasionally he could meet warriors wearing weapons on the road. Can't the AI family be quick? They have to wait a month before the auction. This healing pill that can instantly heal injuries, the AI family can refine it and auction it to the public. What's the big deal about waiting for a while? I heard that several big families and big sects have sent people here. As they compete with each other, we poor people can only stand by and join in the fun. The warriors on the road were talking about it. Obviously, they were all outsiders, gathered in the city, waiting for the AI family to auction the healing pill for the second time. Many families and sects were ready to take it down no matter how much it cost once the pill was auctioned. It must be said that the AI family is very good at doing business. After the first auction and continuous publicity, they successfully whetted the appetite of warriors from various counties. The auction of healing pills had nothing to do with Jun Changxiao. He was too lazy to show up, so he went to the market first and bought a lot of seasonings before entering the AI family herbal medicine store. Shopkeeper Ma, who was checking out at the counter, saw Jun Changxiao coming in. Without waiting for the errand boy to greet him, he walked out in person and said with a shaking smile, "Master Jun, I'm sorry for not welcoming you. I'm sorry for not welcoming you." The head of the AI family had already issued an order before the first auction of pills that the head of the Tigu sect was a top VIP guest of the AI family. If he came to the store, he must not be neglected. Jun Changxiao said, "Where is the head of the AI family? I want to discuss a big business with him." Another big business? Shopkeeper Ma hurriedly made a gesture to invite him, saying, "Master Jun, please sit down first. I will go to inform the head of the family." As he said that, he gave the servant a look to serve tea and hurriedly left the store to go to the AI family. Jun Changxiao didn't sit down. He came to the medicine shelf and looked at the herbs in the bamboo basket. When he saw something interesting, he raised his hand to touch it. "Don't touch it." Suddenly, a voice came from behind. Jun Changxiao turned around and found that in the corner of the store, an old man with white hair was trimming a potted plant with a pair of small scissors. Crazy old man. The servant in the store scolded, "This is sect leader Jun of the Tigu sect, don't be rude." Then he hurriedly smiled and said, "Sect leader Jun, he was a temporary worker hired a few days ago to trim the herbs. He doesn't know the rules, so don't bother with him." Jun Changxiao asked curiously, "Why can't we touch it?" The old man didn't even raise his head. While trimming the herbs, he said, "The herb is called rotten leaf grass. The leaves gather spiritual power. If people touch it, the spiritual power will decay, and the efficacy will be greatly reduced. TSK. The servant rolled his eyes at him and said, "I move rotten leaf grass around every day and come across it many times. Can't I still use it to refine pills?" "You crazy old man are talking nonsense again." The old man sighed. "It's because of clumsy people like you that the herbs that could have exerted 100% of their efficacy can only exert 50% or 60% after refining pills. It's really heartbreaking." Okay, you're just professional. I'm too lazy to bother with you." The servant seemed to have argued with the old man more than once. He did not continue to argue with him, but smiled and said, "Master Jun, please take a look." Jun Changxiao became interested and said, "Senior seems to be very knowledgeable about medicinal materials." The old man held his waist and stood up and said, "Master Jun is the leader of a sect. I can't bear the title of senior. Elders are respected. I deserve it. I deserve it." Jun Changxiao said. Surprise appeared on the old man's face, and he shook his head and said, "The Xinjiang continent has always respected martial arts and elders. This is the first time I have heard of it." Jun Changxiao wanted to continue the conversation, but AI Shangni had already rushed over. As soon as he entered the store, he bowed and smiled and said, "Master Jun, what wind brought you here? P.S. Thank you? Farewell? Lee. 151 ****************** 45. Natural personality always speechless? Lei, holding the wine, but not knowing who to drink with, and Feng Xiaodao's reward of 10,000! The last day of the weekend, please recommend! If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 Declaration of War. Reception Room. Jun Changxiao put the prescription of Kamadan with the medicinal materials on the table, clasped his fingers together, and said with a smile, "Master AI, how many of the medicinal materials listed above do you have in your AI family?" AI Shang glanced at it, pondered for a while and said, "Master Jun, these 4 kinds of medicinal materials are not many in my AI family, only about 300 of each. I want them all." Jun Changxiao said cheerfully. K-Maidan increases the rate of opening meridians, and Yijinjing also increases the rate of opening meridians. Isn't it amazing to combine the two? So it must be refined as soon as possible. AI Shang smiled and said, Master Jun, please wait a moment. He gave a look to shopkeeper Ma, who hurried to the inner courtyard, then took out a few space rings and placed them on the table. K-Maiden medicinal materials are not too precious, so the pharmacy has them in stock. After Jun Changxiao inspected the goods, he said, Master AI, make an offer. AI Shang glared. These herbs are worth 110,000 taels in total. Master Jun, give me 100,000. If it were another customer, he would definitely not bargain. But whether the AI family can make a lot of money with the healing pills in the future depends on this god of wealth. Jun Changxiao said, deal. The two followed the rules, signed and sealed, and the herbs transaction was completed. By the way, Jun Changxiao pointed to the old man who was trimming herbs outside and asked curiously, who is this senior? AI Shang glared, a herbalist. Herbalist? Jun Changxiao had never heard of it. The original owner lived in Qingyang village since he was a child and later joined the Tegu sect. He rarely went out and didn't know much about many things on the mainland. AI Shangni explained, a herbalist is a profession that cultivates and plants medicinal herbs. I see. Jun Changxiao understood and said, no wonder he knows so much about medicinal herbs. AI Shangni shook his head and said, Master Jun, this man is only a third grade medicine apprentice. There are many herbalists who are better than him and know more than him. Herbalists are also divided into levels, similar to martial arts, such as apprentice, master, clan, and king. The same is true for alchemists and spirit stones. A third grade medicine apprentice. It is very common in Xingyao continent. Compared with other professions, herbalists are relatively common, and their status is not noble. They are even jokingly called herbal farmers. Of course, without their careful cultivation and planting of medicinal herbs, it would be difficult to supply the huge market demand of Xingyao continent by simply digging medicinal herbs in the mountains. So herbalists are also indispensable. Many forces will specially hire herbalists to open up medicinal gardens, cultivate and plant medicinal herbs, and achieve self-sufficiency. A third-rank medicine apprentice is also a herbalist. Master AI, please don't look down on me. The white-haired old man heard what AI Shangni said and retorted. Oh, you crazy old man, you dare to talk to our master like this? Are you tired of living? The servant rolled up his sleeves and rushed over. AI Shangni waved his hand and said, back off. The servant glared at the old man and then retreated in dismay. Jun Changxiao walked out and said with a smile, Senior, my Tegu sect is still short of an herbalist. Are you interested in joining? The old man waved his hand and said, there are a lot of herbalists who are better than me. Sect Master Jun, please ask someone else. TSK. The servant snorted coldly and muttered, it is your blessing to be favored by Sect Master Jun, but you still refuse. You are such a crazy old man. AI Shangni smiled and said, Second Master Jun, my AI family has many herbalists, most of whom are at the 7th or 8th level. If your sect is short of one, AI can. Jun Changxiao interrupted and said, just give this senior to me. AI Shangni's mouth twitched, and he said, Second Master Jun, Mr. Wei is just a temporary worker in my AI family. It is up to him to decide whether to go or not. Is that so? Jun Changxiao said, Senior, I'm willing to hire you with a large sum of money. Are you willing to go to the Tegu sect and serve as a herbalist? AI Shangni was a little puzzled. Third-rank medicine apprentices can be found everywhere, and there are more than 10 of them in the AI family. Why did the leader of the Tegu sect fall for this neurotic old man? Wei Lao said, Master Jun, do you really want to hire me as the herbalist of the Tegu sect? Yes. Jun Chang said with a smile. Wei Lao put the scissors on the shelf and said, I have been a herbalist for 60 years, and only Master Jun sincerely invited me. Jun Chang smiled and said, there are many good horses, but it is difficult to find a good horse trainer. What about a good horse trainer? Wei Lao smiled and said, if Master Jun sincerely invites me, I'm willing to go to the Tegu sect, but how much is the salary you are talking about? A monthly salary of 10,000 taels. Jun Chang said with a smile. AI Shang was stunned. The monthly salary of his 8th and 9th rank medicine apprentices was only 10,000 taels. For a 3rd rank medicine apprentice, a monthly salary of 1,000 taels was already very high. Old Wei said, Master Jun is very sincere. I will follow you to the Tegu sect after I return home to give instructions. Jun Chang smiled and said, Master AI, it should be okay for me to take this man away, right? No problem, no problem. In the south of the city, in a deep alley, Jun Changxiao followed Wei Lao to his residence. The house was shabby and the environment was dark. As soon as he walked in, a group of 8 or 9-year-old children surrounded him, calling him grandpa one by one, with innocent smiles on their faces. Jun Changxiao said, Wei Lao has many children and grandchildren, and he is a blessed man. Wei Lao handed out the candies he bought one by one, and said with a loving look, these are all orphans adopted by this old man. Jun Changxiao was stunned. In this cruel world, it is incredible that someone would adopt orphans. Sect leader Jun thought the world of high martial arts was too dark. In fact, there are always good people everywhere, doing seemingly ridiculous good deeds. Sect leader Jun. Wei Lao said, can you pay me some salary in advance? Yes. Jun Changxiao took out 1,000 taels. After Wei Lao took it, he only gave the older boy 300 taels, and after a few instructions, he packed his luggage and left. On the way, Jun Changxiao said with a smile, Old Wei, you can actually take them to the Tegu sect. Old Wei shook his head and said, this world is very cruel. They will eventually have to learn to face it on their own. I can only help them for a while, not for the rest of their lives. So, Jun Changxiao said, giving them a few hundred taels is also because they don't want them to rely too much on you? Yes. Old Wei said. This old man must have extraordinary experience. Ding. The side quest is completed, and the host gets 50 contribution points. Ding. Contribution value of the sect. 313 over 500. After Jun Changxiao and AI Shangni completed the transaction, the side quest was triggered, which was to hire Old Wei as the herbalist of the Tegu sect. No wonder he was willing to hire him at a monthly salary of 10,000 taels. In fact, even without the side quest, Jun Changxiao would have recruited Old Wei, because his intuition told him that this was not a simple person. Okay. Your Tegu sect is full of people with stories. We bravely traveled to the ends of the earth for a few boxes, and sat down to listen to your stories. Master Jun. Old Wei said, since you have hired me as the herbalist of the Tegu sect, does the sect have any herbal seeds? Go buy some. Jun Changxiao said with a smile. The two of them went to the herbal medicine market, and bought many varieties of herbal medicines, before returning to the Tegu sect. As soon as they returned to the sect, Li Qingyang handed them something and said, Master, 2 hours ago, someone sent a letter. Oh. Jun Changxiao took it, and opened the envelope, and saw that it said, 3 days later, please invite the master of the Tegu sect to the ruins of the Lingquan sect for a battle. The signer is Mo Shangfei, an inner disciple of the Lingquan sect. Li Qingyang said solemnly, Master, this is a declaration of war. Jun Changxiao held the letter in his palm, smiled faintly and said, the Lingquan sect finally couldn't sit still. They only sent an inner disciple. Isn't it underestimating me, Jun Changxiao? Chapter 110 I don't mind playing with them. After destroying Lingquan sect, Jun Changxiao thought that Lingquan sect would come to trouble him, but he didn't expect that they would issue a declaration of war. Right. If Wei Yixi had not played tricks at the beginning, and had settled the feud between the two sects in this way, how could he have done such a thing as destroying the sect? Master. Li Qingyang said solemnly, to be able to become an inner disciple of Lingquan sect, one must have outstanding talent and strength. Jun Changxiao touched his chin and said, since you asked your disciples to issue a declaration of war, wouldn't I, as the leader of a sect, be laughed at if I went to fight? Qingyang. He paused and said, you will accept the challenge. Yes. Li Qingyang said. Jun Changxiao said with a smile, this battle is about the honor of the sect. No matter what, I must win it. Li Qingyang shouted, disciple must do my best. In fact, he was under a lot of pressure. After all, his opponent was a 5th-rate and a disciple of Lingquan sect, and he might not be weaker than himself in talent and strength. Jun Changxiao clasped his fingers together, resting his chin on his head and said, "What I want is to win." "Yes," Li Qingyang said loudly, "in 3 days, I will definitely win." Jun Changxiao waved his hand, threw 10 key gathering pills and 3 spirit stones, and said, "Don't worry about anything these 2 days, just practice hard for me to prepare for the battle in 3 days. The 10 spirit stones were obtained from the sect's competition, and he was reluctant to use them. Now that the Strongest Sect came to fight, he gave Li Qingyang 3 without hesitation, hoping that he would become stronger in the shortest time and be sure to win. Li Qingyang took the pills and spirit stones and said with a firm look, "I will definitely not let the master down." As he said that, he left the hall to practice hard. Lu Qian leaned against the door and said calmly, "Why don't you let me fight?" Jun Changxiao said with a smile, "Qingyang is steady and knows the big picture. I hope he can become stronger and more confident to help me manage the Tegu sect." Lu Qian said calmly, "So, this is the reason the headmaster is looking for to be a hands-off boss in the future?" Jun Changxiao covered his chest, collapsed on the back of the chair, and pretended to be weak and said, "Oh, I can't do it. My heart hurts so much." Lu Qian rolled her eyes at him and said, "The Strongest Sect came to fight this time, which shows that they care about the Lincoln sect. Our Tegu sect has a grudge with such a sect." Jun Changxiao stopped acting awkwardly and spread his hands and said, "As long as they don't play tricks, I don't mind playing with them." If outsiders heard this, they would definitely be speechless. "You are an 8th-rate sect. Where do you get the confidence and courage to play with the 5th-rate sect?" Jun Changxiao settled old Weddy in the inner courtyard and planned more than 10 acres of vacant land in the back mountain as a medicinal garden and handed it over to him to take care of. "Master, please send a few disciples to help me reclaim the wasteland." Old Weddy, who had just settled down, did not plan to rest, but began to perform his duties. Jun Changxiao called Su Xiaomo, Shan Qi, Li Fei and others to help reclaim the wasteland. In just half a day, more than 10 acres of wasteland were plowed by them, and the soil was soft and suitable for planting. Old Weddy carefully took out the medicinal seeds, and then hunched over and planted them one step at a time. "Old Weddy," Su Xiaomo said, "let us help you." Old Weddy shook his hand and said, "To sow medicinal seeds, you must have a sincere heart to nurture medicinal herbs that gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. You little kids are too impetuous, so let me do it alone." The disciples of the Tegu sect were speechless. Since they were not allowed to help, they left the back mountain and went to practice separately. It was not until dusk that Elder Weddy planted the medicinal seeds on more than 10 acres of land. The spacing between each medicinal herb and even the depth of the pit were very particular. If any colleagues saw this, they would definitely praise it from the bottom of their hearts. Professional. Since Elder Weddy was hired, Jun Changxiao no longer asked about it, but sat cross-legged in the room, pulled out the alchemy pavilion, and after a series of dings, he refined 300 meridian opening pills. This thing combined with the Yi Jinjing will definitely open the meridians easily. Let Do try it tomorrow. While muttering, he waved his hand and took out a spirit stone. Li Qingyang needed to practice, and he also needed to practice, because the battle of Strongest Sect meant that they had to confront the 5th-rate sect head-on, and their cultivation must be improved as soon as possible. "How do I use it?" Holding the spirit stone, Sect Master Jun was confused. The system said, "Just like communicating with the crystal core, communicate with the spirit stone, draw out the spiritual power inside, slowly refine it, and then integrate it into the cyclone." Oh. Jun Changxiao did as he was told, and when his mind was integrated into the spirit stone, he felt the majestic spiritual power inside, and couldn't help but exclaimed, "It's so pure." "Nonsense." The system said, "If it's not pure, can it be 10,000 taels per stone?" Jun Changxiao ignored him, and began to guide the spiritual power in the spirit stone, and gradually formed a soft line that flew out, and drilled into the body through the nostrils. The Yi Jinjing was running, and it began to slowly refine. After a night, the spirit stone placed in the palm of his hand changed from crystal to grey, and the cyclone in Jun Changxiao's stanchion was obviously much stronger than before. He secretly exclaimed, "If I take 4 or 5 more of them, it will be easy to break through from the 8th level to the 9th level." Jun Changxiao had speculated that, even if he took the key condensation pill and practiced non-stop, it would take at least half a month. Now that he has the spirit stone, he can break through in 2 or 3 days, if he keeps taking it. It's so scary. The system said, Spirit Stone is the most important cultivation resource in Xinjiang continent. How many warriors have been running around for this thing for their whole lives, and even lose their lives? How to get Spirit Stone? Jun Changxiao asked. The system said, either find a mineral vein to mine, or find a spiritual master, to refine from a high quality crystal core. Jun Changxiao touched his chin and said, we already have a herbalist. It seems that we have to find a time, to go down the mountain, to hire a spiritual master. The system poured cold water on him and said, the profession of spiritual master is very rare. Even the lowest level spiritual apprentices are less than 10 in the entire Qingyang County. If the host really wants to hire one, be prepared to take out the courage, to pay a monthly salary of 1 million. 1 million? Robbing money. The next day, Jun Changxiao called Liu Wanshi over and said, Dudu, what level are you at now? When can you open your meridians? Liu Wanshi said, Master, I'm now at the 4th stage of opening my meridians. I have condensed spiritual energy, and can open my meridians at any time. She has superb cooking skills, but her spiritual roots are only at the ordinary level. On weekdays, she is responsible for the meals of her senior brothers, so she and Yi Xingchen entered the sect together and only opened the 4th meridian. Here, Jun Changxiao said, this is a meridian opening pill, which can help you successfully open your meridians. Liu Wanshi took the pill, staring with her big round eyes, and said in disbelief, meridian opening pill? That's a very expensive pill. Master, are you really going to give it to me? Seeing the cute look of the little girl, Jun Changxiao wanted to pinch her face. Go and break through. Yeah. Liu Wanshi didn't leave, but sat cross-legged on the floor of the hall, took the meridian opening pill, and circulated the Yijinjing. As a result, the meridians were opened. To be exact, when the little girl just mobilized her spiritual energy to attack the blocked meridians, she easily opened them. Hoo-hoo. The spiritual power penetrated the 5th main meridian, and the 5th halo condensed on Liu Wanshi's wrist, making her overjoyed and said, Master, I opened the 5th meridian. It seemed that she was too excited, and she jumped up and pounced on Jun Changxiao. Swish. Master Jun made a wrong step and dodged perfectly, and then there was a bang sound, and the petite Liu Wanshi fell to the ground in a big shape. This must be an instinctive avoidance reaction formed after practicing martial arts for a long time. Liu Wanshi stood up, rubbed her forehead, tears welled up in her eyes, and said pitifully, Master, why don't you catch me? P.S. Thank you for the reward. Students who have tickets don't hide them, throw them all at me. I will never avoid it like the single dog Jun Changxiao. Chapter 111 Going to Linquan Mountain again. With the combined efforts of the meridian opening pill and the muscle changing sutra, Liu Wanshi was able to open the 5th meridian easily. Afterwards, Jun Changxiao summoned the disciples who had not reached the 12th stage of meridian opening. There were not many of them, only 13. 4 of them had opened the 10th stage, and 9 had opened the 11th stage. It was not that they did not work hard enough, but that they were unlucky. Sometimes, even if the muscle changing sutra increased the chance, they would fail continuously when opening a meridian, so they were gradually left behind. Seeing that most of their fellow disciples had entered the 12th stage, the 13 disciples felt very self-blaming and frustrated, and felt deeply ashamed of the support from the headmaster in various martial arts resources. Jun Changxiao could see this, so he gave each of them 3 meridian opening pills and encouraged them. A temporary failure does not mean a permanent failure. Practice hard and you can do it. The system said, the host is becoming more and more like the headmaster. This is what it means. Could it be that I didn't look like the headmaster before? I was very weak before, and I didn't look like the headmaster. Now that my cultivation has improved, my physique has become stronger, and my personality charm has also been revealed. I really look like the headmaster of a sect. But what is missing? Lack the style of a strong person who has been in a high position for a long time. This temperament is not easy to cultivate. First of all, the leader must be a real strong person. Secondly, the sect must also be strong. If not dominating the continent, at least it must dominate one side. A person who has been in a high position for a long time is nothing. Since I, Jun Changxiao, have come to the Xinjiang continent, I will be the strongest leader who can hold the power of the world when awake and sleep in the lap of a beauty when drunk. The system complained, single dog, go to bed. After the 13 disciples took the Kame pill, 9 of them broke through from the 11th stage to the 12th stage, and the other 4 disciples also entered the 11th stage from the 10th stage. What is this? 100% pulse rate. The next day, after learning that all the disciples had opened their meridians, Jun Changxiao said happily, in the future, recruiting new disciples, as long as they gather enough spiritual energy, opening the meridians will be a piece of cake. Zuji and Xingchen are out for training, otherwise give them a few pills each, and they will definitely be greatly improved when they return. The combination of Yijinjing and Kame Dan can allow warriors at the Kame level to achieve 100% success in opening the meridians. This is very scary. If it is spread out, it will definitely cause an uproar. Unfortunately, no one knows. In the eyes of many high-level forces, the Tegu sect is still like a low-level ant, slowly crawling along the high mountains that reach the sky. On the eve of the battle, Li Qingyang sat cross-legged in the spiritual power formation. He concentrated his mind and spirit to operate Yijinjing, and his body was enveloped by layers of spiritual power, like a silkworm cocoon wrapped around himself. Suzaomo and others knew that the second senior brother was going to fight with the inner disciples of Strongest Sect, so they did not enter the formation for 2 days, for fear of accidentally disturbing him. Plop. After a while, the last spiritual stone fell to the ground in a dull color, because its energy was completely absorbed. Li Qingyang took a deep breath and absorbed all the spiritual energy that permeated his body. The moment he opened his eyes, 2 rays of light flashed. 4th grade martial artist, there should be no problem. During the sect competition, he entered the 1st grade martial artist early, and it took him a while to enter the 2nd grade. Now with the help of spiritual stones and key gathering pills, he can upgrade to levels in 2 days. As the first genius of Qingyang City, Li Qingyang's qualifications are unquestionable, but the reason for his slow cultivation before was that he had to help the headmaster with many internal affairs, which invisibly delayed a lot of cultivation time. He had no complaints, because this was the headmaster's trust in him, and he had to do his best to do everything well. Night fell. Li Qingyang walked out of the formation and entered the training room and began the final physical shaping of the battle with the disciples of Strongest Sect. On the roof of the main hall, Jun Changxiao sat on the ridge, his elbows on his legs, his palms folded together, and the back of his hands dragged his chin and said, Qingyang, you have worked hard during this period. Lu Qian Qian was cold and unkind. Xiao Zuji was decadent and depressed. Suzaomo was naughty and carefree, and all the disciples were talented. But a sect cannot rely on the leader alone. Li Qingyang, who has a steady personality, is undoubtedly what Jun Changxiao needs the most and likes very much. This time, he was asked to fight in the hope of gathering enough prestige to better assist himself in leading the sect's fellow disciples. The next day, it was just dawn, and Liu Wanshi went to the kitchen early to prepare a hearty breakfast, which was brought to the table one by Ma Yangning and 2 assassins. After a while, the disciples came to eat. Li Qingyang also came. Although he practiced in the shaping room all night, he looked energetic. Suzaomo came over, holding up the bowl and said, Junior brother, I wish you to defeat the disciples of Strongest Sect and spread the prestige of our Tegu sect. As he said that, he drank the soup in one gulp. He hurriedly stuck out his tongue and exhaled. Hot, hot. Other disciples also came to congratulate, and the atmosphere in the cafeteria suddenly became warm. Liu Wanshi, wearing an apron, poked her head out of the kitchen, shook the spoon in her hand, and said with a smile, I got up early today, just to make a hearty meal for my second senior brother on his journey. Plop. Everyone fell down. Li Qingyang staggered and supported himself on the table, with a black line on his forehead. Children speak without restraint. Children speak without restraint. Not long after, Jun Changxiao came in. After having a sumptuous meal with a group of disciples, he took Li Qingyang and Lu Qian, several main disciples, on the road without any worries. Yaoyang City, Lingquan Mountain. The first time he came, Jun Changxiao destroyed the Lingquan sect, and the second time he accepted the challenge. Here they come. The Tegu sect really accepted the challenge. I thought that guy didn't dare to come to the Shenquan sect. Jun Changxiao led a few disciples up the mountain and saw many warriors in different costumes gathered outside the ruins of the Lingquan sect. He didn't go down the mountain these days and didn't know that the news that the Shenquan sect had challenged his sect had already spread in Qingyang County. The sects and warriors who received the news would not miss it, and they came to Yaoyang City as early as yesterday. Many sects from the 100 Sects Alliance also came. For example, the leader of the Huxiao sect, and the leader of the Iron Fist gang who was punched out by Zhao Ziji. When they saw Jun Changxiao and the disciples of Tegu sect coming up, the corners of their mouths all rose, and a faint sneer appeared. Boy, it's a good thing you quit the alliance. The lord of Shenquan sect was generous and didn't care, otherwise, we would definitely not let you go. Jun Changxiao smiled and said, it's just a battle, but it's more lively than the sect competition. I'm really surprised. Master Jun, the leader of Huxiao sect, said lightly, the people of Shenquan sect are waiting for you in the Lingquan sect martial arts field. After entering, you may be scared. After the Qingyang City meeting, the 100 Sects Alliance must not like Jun Changxiao. This time, they came here naturally, to see how he was bullied by the 5th-rate sect. When they thought of the arrogance of that guy in Xingyu Tower, and then thought about the panic expression he would show when facing Shenquan sect later, the leaders of various sects smiled suddenly. Lingquan sect is just a ruin. How can I be frightened? Jun Changxiao led his disciples to walk forward. As soon as they entered, they saw 3 chairs placed in front of them where the hall collapsed. There were 3 people sitting on the chairs. In the center was a middle-aged man with a resolute face, holding his hands together and lowering his head slightly. On the left was another middle-aged man, holding his face with one hand, his face slightly gloomy. On the right was a man with forehead wrinkles, one leg resting on the other, holding up his little finger to pick his ear, very carefree. Although the 3 people looked very different, they had one thing in common. They all exuded a strong aura, and their cultivation must be not weaker than the elders of Kangshan sect. Jun Changxiao touched his nose and thought to himself, if these 3 people put on navy uniforms, and put on long cloaks engraved with justice, they would definitely be the 3 admirals of the navy. P.S. Thanks to STHCDTH and Brilliant Brothers for the rewards, and special thanks to the readers, who previously gave 10,000 rewards, and voted for the whole group, which helped the recommendation votes of the Strongest Sect break 12,000 plus per week. This is the last day of this week, and the 4th update is presented. Chapter 112, Iron-Willed. The 3 warriors sitting in the ruins of the hall had a strong aura, giving people a very strong feeling, and even the air became oppressive. They were the 3rd, 4th and 5th elders of the Shenquan sect, and their cultivation was all at the level of Wuzang. The 3 Wuzang elders were dispatched for this battle, and it seemed that they also wanted to tell the world that Lingquan sect, which was related to Shenquan sect, could not be destroyed casually. On the right side of the 3 stood a group of blue-clothed warriors, who were disciples of Shenquan sect. There were many warriors on the left, including Ziguancan, the lord of Qingyang City, Qin Horan, the leader of the 100 Sects Alliance, and the head of the 6th Stream sect of Qingyang County. The battle was huge. No wonder the head of the Tiger Or sect had to stand outside. Ziguancan said inwardly, Master Jun, the Shenquan sect sent 3 elders this time. It seems to be a battle, but in fact it is putting pressure on you. Z can't help. The 5th Stream sect is a huge monster. Although he is the lord of Qingyang City, he is powerless. Qin Horan and the heads of the 6 flow sects looked at Jun Changxiao with a playful look. Boy, facing this scene, can you still be as arrogant as Xingyu Tower? Jun Changxiao led his disciples to stop outside the martial arts arena. The stone slab in front was charred black. Wasn't it because he set fire to Lingquan sect? The 3rd elder sitting in the middle seat slowly raised his head and said, are you the head of the Tegu sect? His eyes were sharp and his voice was like a bell. A stream of spiritual power was spreading. Jun Changxiao straightened his chest and put his hands behind his back and said calmly, yes. The disciples standing behind him, except Luke and Qian, also held their heads high and chests high, without any timidity on their faces. What is the first purpose of the Tegu sect? Be a man of iron bones, and do things of iron bones. Although there are 3 martial arts masters in front, the aura that permeates makes them extremely depressed, but the iron bones will not be bent because of this. Ziguancan secretly admired the Iron Bone Sect, a body of iron. Even Jun Changxiao himself, facing the 3 martial arts masters, truly understood why the first leader was named the Iron Bone Sect. At that moment, the great soul of sect leader Wang, who was beheaded for visiting the brothel and escaping from prison, seemed to appear in the sky, spreading his broad arms and pouring out the iron bone buff, allowing them to face the strong enemy and remain calm in the face of danger. Humph. Alliance leader Qin sneered and secretly said, pretending to be calm. He thought differently from Ziguancan, thinking that Jun Changxiao and the disciples of the Iron Bone Sect were so strong, just pretending, and must be very scared and uneasy in their hearts. Pretending? Not happening. If the situation allowed, sect leader Jun would set up magic and play a few rounds with the disciples. The third elder of the Shenquan sect clasped his 10 fingers together, and the looming spiritual power appeared, and he said in a deep voice, did you destroy the Linquan sect too? The spiritual power was rippling. If it were an ordinary person, they would definitely collapse to the ground, after feeling the heavy aura. Jun Changxiao said indifferently, stop talking nonsense, hurry up and call out KO Shangfei to fight with my disciple. Is it awesome, just because you have a strong aura? If you have the ability, come and kill me. The third elder would not kill him, because this is an open and fair duel. If he kills him regardless of his status, he will be ridiculed by other sects, if it is spread out. Jun Changxiao calculated this point, so he was fearless, and looked at him. No matter how awesome you are, your aura and eyes can't kill people. The system said, if it is a martial emperor, a smile back can make the host collapse into nothingness. Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched. A martial emperor smiled back at him shyly like a woman. That picture is definitely a new material for ghost animals. Stop talking nonsense. Ziguancan covered his face and said in a breakdown, this kid dares to say anything. Alliance leader Qin and the heads of various sects smiled even more. Yes, it is this arrogance. Don't be scared. Keep it up. TSK. The 5th elder on the right grinned and said, a 9th rate leader is quite arrogant. No wonder he dared to kill my outer disciples of Shenquan sect. The word outer disciples made Ziguancan understand that Shenquan sect came here to tell the world that it was not for the destruction of Linquan sect, but for the killing of disciples. With a legitimate reason, no matter how to deal with Tegu sect, other sects will have nothing to say. Jun Changxiao said in surprise, the outer disciples you are talking about are the leader and elders of Linquan sect? Yes. The 5th elder said. TSK. Jun Changxiao said, I heard that Shenquan sect is a famous and upright sect in the world. I thought Wei Yixi, who colluded with the bandits and killers, was just a temporary worker. I didn't expect that he was really a disciple of your sect. The faces of the 3 elders darkened. Of course. Jun Changxiao added, if the Shenquan sect thinks that I'm slandering you, I can produce the letters of collusion between Wei Yixi and the bandit Zhao Xianbra as evidence. The 3 were silent. The 4th elder, who had never spoken, said calmly, the 4 brothers Wei Yixi were just former outer disciples, and were expelled many years ago. Their collusion with the bandits is their own business, and has nothing to do with our Shenquan sect. A 5th rate sect also needs to save face. Jun Changxiao bowed and said, the Shenquan sect discovered the bad nature of the 4 outer disciples early and expelled them. It is worthy of being a famous and upright sect. I admire it. Everyone's mouth twitched. Ziguancan secretly said, this kid is really good at talking. No wonder he made King Sita spit blood on the spot. Now that Wei Yixi has been labeled as expelled, Shenquan sect naturally cannot cause trouble by killing outer disciples and doing whatever they want. Master Jun. The 3rd elder said calmly, it is clearly written in the letter of challenge that I, the inner disciple of Shenquan sect, Mo Shangfei, challenge you, not the disciples of Tegu sect. Jun Changxiao shrugged and said, I'm the leader of a sect. It would not be glorious to win a fight with your disciples, so it is fairest for disciples to fight each other. Qin Horan cast a contemptuous look. As if you can really beat the inner disciples of Strongest Sect. The three elders of Strongest Sect looked at each other and quickly reached a tacit understanding. The third elder said, in this case, let the disciples of our sect learn the high skills of the disciples of Tegu Sect. Shangfei. He waved his hand and said, let's fight. Yes. The disciple named Demo Shangfei walked out. He was tall and strong, and his exposed muscles were very solid. At first glance, he was very powerful. Jun Changxiao thought to himself, what is his cultivation? The system said, 8th grade martial artist, pure physical explosion is about 1.7 W kilograms. So high. Jun Changxiao frowned. The previous leader of the Longsword Sect, a 9th grade martial artist, only had a strength of 1.4 W. The disciple of the Holy Spring Sect was 1 grade lower, but his strength was 3,000 pound higher, which shows that he is very talented. King Guiyang. He whispered, the opponent is not weak, be careful. Yeah. Li King Guiyang walked to the center of the martial arts arena, a few meters away from Mo Shangfei, and bowed. Iron Bone Sect, Li King Guiyang. The fifth elder of the Holy Spring Sect scratched his ears and said lightly, Master Jun, the disciple sent by our sect is an 8th grade martial artist. You sent a 4th grade martial artist. Aren't you sending him here to be abused? Chapter 113, Stunning Skills. 8th rank martial arts apprentice? Suzaomo, Shinki and other disciples' faces changed slightly. There is a huge difference between the 4th rank and the 8th rank. Can the second brother win? Lu Qian frowned slightly and whispered, Master, the opponent is too strong. Let me fight. Mo Shangfei's strength made her not think that the second brother could win. Jun Changxiao took out a chair from the space ring and sat down. She tapped her fingers on the armrest and said, as the eldest sister, you must have enough confidence in your junior brother no matter when and where. Lu Qian was silent and stood behind with the junior brothers. Although Li King Guiyang's qualifications are good, Mo Shangfei of the Strongest Sect is also a top-rank spiritual root. Sending him up has no chance of winning at all. Iron Bone Sect has only this one disciple who can show off, right? Alliance leader Qin and the heads of various sects sneered. Such a good opportunity. Why didn't they ridicule the Iron Bone Sect for being in the Xingyu Tower and suffering that bad breath? Of course. They don't think Li King Guiyang is bad. But with the same qualifications and excellence, Mo Shangfei is much better than the other party in terms of resources and mentors. If this King Guiyang City's first genius joins the Kangshan sect, he must be an inner disciple, and his achievements will definitely be better than now. Alas, such a good qualification is wasted in vain. The leaders of various sects were very regretful. What is the truth? It's just a different way to mock the Tegu sect and Jun Changxiao's tireless destruction of people. Zi Guankan said inwardly, more than 2 months ago, Li King Guiyang only opened the meridians at the 10th level. Now he has entered the 4th grade martial arts apprentice. The growth rate is already good. You are really a bunch of blind people. This is not blindness, but for the sake of blackening. Jun Changxiao ignored the ridicule of others, intentionally or unintentionally looked into the distance, vaguely saw a flash of light, and said inwardly, Zuji is here too. Yes. Xiao Zuji is also there. He was lying on a high slope 800 meters away, his body wrapped in grass, one eye pressed against the lens, and the muzzle of the 88 type sniper rifle was already aimed at Mo Shangfei. During the outdoor training, Xiao Zuji heard the news of the battle and came early. He had been lying in the bushes for a day and a night. Even the 3 martial arts masters who came later had never thought that there would be a ghost sniper lurking in the dark. Master, the gun is ready. Whoever you point at, the disciple will hit. Yi Xingchen lay on a stone in the distance and thought to himself, if it weren't for this emperor using the Taixu and Sutra to hide your breath, do you really think that you can lie in the bushes without being noticed by the gods? Mo Shangfei from Strongest Sect. Mo Shangfei said his name lightly, with a disdainful tone and eyes. He had heard of Li King Guiyang, but didn't take it seriously. After all, if he joined a second-rate sect, he would definitely be slowly assimilated into garbage. They said their names to each other, and the battle should have begun. However, the third elder said, Master Jun, Fists and feet have no eyes. If my disciples hurt your disciples, please bear with me. Is this telling himself that the guy will be very fierce later? Jun Changxiao shook his head and said, if my disciple hurts your disciple, please bear with me. Qin Horan and others rolled their eyes. It's absolutely a joke that a 4th grade can hurt an 8th grade. The 3rd elder was too lazy to argue with Jun Changxiao and said lightly, you can start. Swish. As soon as the voice fell, Mo Shangfei stepped forward, and his right fist, which was full of spiritual power, blasted over with a powerful force. Very quickly, very suddenly. Bang. Li Qingyang had no time to dodge, and in a hurry, his hands crossed, and took the opponent's punch. Thump, thump, thump. He retreated more than 10 steps and barely stabilized his body. Judging from the degree of spiritual energy in the air, the guy's punch was at least 20,000 pounds. Ha. Li Qingyang shook his slightly numb arm. Ha. Mo Shangfei retracted his fist and said in surprise, you can withstand my gale fist without changing your expression. Your physical defense is pretty good. But, he smiled and said, how many times can you withstand it? Swish. He rushed over with his body skills. Before he arrived, his left and right fists were frequently swung out, and under the blessing of spiritual power, they turned into fist shadows. The ordinary intermediate level gale fist is known for its speed and fierceness. Mo Shangfei has comprehended it to the extreme. This time he used it, which amazed Qin Mengsu and others. Suzaomo and Shanqi's faces changed in shock. If it were them, they would not be able to dodge such a fast punch and power, and would definitely be beaten to a pulp. Li Qingyang frowned slightly and crossed his arms again, but after hearing a few bangs, he took all the powerful punches and retreated step by step. He didn't stabilize his body until he retreated to the edge of the martial arts field and stepped on the stone slab with one foot. Mo Shangfei, who was unyielding, quickly followed, flew into the air, and with the spiritual power of his right fist, he blasted over with a flash of light. This blow was very strong. Alliance leader Qin and the heads of various factions instantly judged that Li Qingyang could not dodge left and right now, and he had to either retreat or take the blow head on. Retreating meant defeat. And after taking several punches in a row, if he took the blow head on, he would definitely be injured. At this time, they hoped that Li Qingyang would retreat, because it meant defeat. He lost without making any moves from the beginning, and he could definitely be ridiculed. Jun Changxiao tapped his fingers regularly, not because he was panicking, but because he was really calm. Step. At this moment, Li Qingyang suddenly stepped on the ground with one foot, and his right fist was retracted to his abdomen. Spiritual power rushed into his arm from the meridians, and the dazzling light gathered in his fist. Explosive fist. With a cold shout, his right fist suddenly blasted out, and at the same time, a wind vortex formed about 1 meter under his feet. Bang bang bang. The sound of explosion came, resounding in the martial arts field, like a string of firecrackers being lit, shocking everyone's face. Bang. In the blink of an eye, Li Qingyang's fist carrying the explosive force directly hit Mo Shangfei's fist, and knocked him out. Dang dang dang. The inner disciple of the Shengquan sect staggered to the ground, and retreated more than 20 meters, before he stabilized with difficulty. The right fist that was blasted against him felt a strong pain, and his eyes were filled with shock. The force of the gale fist that he had condensed had reached 22,000 Jin. He was completely at a disadvantage when he faced him head on. Alliance leader Qin and others, who had already prepared their lines to mock the Iron Bone School, were stunned when they saw Mo Shangfei being beaten back. It was incredible that he could still turn the tide in the situation just now. Explosive fist? What kind of martial arts is this? How come I have never heard of it? With the cultivation of a 4th grade martial artist, he repelled the 8th grade martial artist who performed the gale fist. Could it be a middle grade level boxing technique? Standing on the high slope, watching, Yi Xingchen was secretly shocked and said, this boxing technique is definitely not simple. Swish. Suddenly, Li Qingyang stepped forward, and at the same time, his right fist turned into a palm knife, pouring spiritual power into his palm, and swung it violently in the air like a knife falling from his hand. Swish. 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 In an instant, Three crescent-like streams of light, dragging arcs of light, burst out from three directions, leaving faint light and shadows wherever they passed. That's right, I cut it! Exclamation mark. Ziguancan exclaimed, spiritual power martial arts. Qin Horan and the heads of various sects widened their eyes, and finally their eyes were filled with shock. Even the three elders of Strongest Sect, who were sitting on the diorite, almost couldn't help but stand up when they saw Li Qingyang cut out three crescent-shaped streams of light with his sword. Spiritual power martial arts. They also have it in Strongest Sect, but the lowest level is also the middle grade high level. Only martial artists can control it. The weak cyclone in the Danshan of martial artists is absolutely difficult to display it. Jun Changxiao imitated the fifth elder, put one leg on the other leg, and smiled faintly. You're not so surprised, right? Chapter 114. The fun has just begun. Li Qingyang performed the spiritual power martial arts of I/, which shocked everyone. Incredible. Yi Di was also shocked. He had practiced many kinds of spiritual power martial arts in his previous life, and he knew the shortcomings of this martial arts, which consumed a lot of spiritual energy. For example, the Jingtao Sun and Moon / he practiced was also a spiritual power martial arts. The condition must be reached to the martial saint, and one move would consume nearly 60% of the energy of the cyclone. What about Li Qingyang? Just by raising his hands and feet, he cut out three streams of light. The process was not too easy. The explosion fist just now, and the I/now deeply shocked Yi Xingchen, making him realize that the martial arts of the Tigu school are very good. Breakthrough to the martial arts apprentice. Practicing the martial arts of this school seems to be better than practicing the martial arts of this emperor back then, he said secretly. Yi Xingchen, who was originally only interested in the Yi Jinjing, also had a strong liking for the explosion fist and I/. Swish, swish, swish. On the martial arts field, three crescent streams of light burst out in different trajectories. Mo Shangfei, who had just stabilized himself, suddenly changed his expression and hurriedly used the Gale Fist to meet him. Bang, bang. His fists collided with the crescent streams coming from the left and right, causing his arms to tremble violently, and a pain like his muscles being torn. Mo Shangfei didn't have time to grin, because the third crescent stream rushed close to the ground, from bottom to top, dragging a 90-degree arc, and hit his chin fiercely. Swish. Driven by the strong force, his whole body flew up, and finally fell heavily to the ground, spurting out a mouthful of blood. Being able to block two of my slashes, this inner disciple of the Strongest Sect performed very well. However, the angle of the third one was tricky and there was no way to dodge it. But, damn it. Mo Shangfei wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stood up. It seemed that his physical body was very strong, and he was only slightly injured after being hit. This was because Li Qingyang did not fully explode his spiritual power. Otherwise, if he only used his fists to resist my slash, the result would be broken bones. The faces of the three elders suddenly fell. They thought that the disciples of this sect could easily defeat the opponent, but they did not expect to be injured by the martial arts that were performed in succession. Qin Horan said, although the spiritual power type martial arts are powerful, the disadvantage is that they cannot last long. If the disciples of Strongest Sect can withstand it, there is nothing to be afraid of. After performing three moves in succession, the disciples of Tigu Sect must have consumed a lot of energy. They must be exhausted if they continue to fight. These big men of the 100 Sects Alliance seemed to be discussing with themselves, but their voices were loud, obviously reminding the inner disciples of Strongest Sect not to be impatient and slowly wear him down. Mo Shangfei did not need to be reminded, and he also knew the weakness of spiritual power type martial arts. He shook his arms and said with a cold look, I was careless just now, and you took the opportunity. This is serious, and he will no longer underestimate the enemy. The fifth elder scratched his ears and grinned. The good show has just begun. Not bad. Jun Changxiao shook his legs and picked his nose and said, the good show has just begun. Swish. After adjusting, Mo Shangfei rushed again, and the swift wind fist was performed at a much faster speed than before. More than 10 fist shadows appeared immediately, and the power was quite explosive. Bang, bang, bang. Li Qingyang performed the explosive fist, and the sound of firecrackers and the sound of the fist confrontation spread together. The faint spiritual power was like ripples in the space. In just a moment, the two of them fought dozens of moves with fists. The dust under their feet continued to collide, forming a vortex around them, and rolled up the broken leaves, and tore them into strips. Bang! The two fought again with a fist, and each retreated 4 or 5 meters. Li Qingyang stretched out his 10 fingers, and his arms were numb from the shock. Mo Shangfei was not much better. This fierce confrontation was like stone hitting stone, hurting the enemy and himself. It seems that it will be difficult to determine the winner in a short time. It's really strange that a 4th grade martial artist can fight on equal terms with an 8th grade martial artist. The boxing skills displayed by the disciples of the Tegu sect are of high quality, otherwise they would have been defeated long ago. The disciples of the Strongest Sect are at a high level, and the spiritual energy in their cyclones is magnificent. There will be no problem in a protracted battle. The hands of the disciples of the Tegu sect are trembling. In my opinion, after these dozens of moves, the spiritual energy in the cyclone of the Danshan has been consumed by 70% to 80%. Swish. Li Qingyang waved his hand knife and said, "I will chop." Swish, a crescent stream of light burst out. He can also perform spiritual power martial arts? The heads of various sects who were discussing were stunned when they saw the stream of light rushing over. "I will chop. I will chop." In a very short time, Li Qingyang waved his hand again, slashing out 2 crescent-shaped streams of light, slapping the faces of a group of big men with practical actions, and telling them that my spiritual energy is sufficient. Bang, bang, bang. Mo Shangfei was alert and dodged immediately. 3 streams of light hit the stone slabs one after another, smashing them to pieces. This time it was Li Qingyang's turn to be unyielding. While the opponent was fleeing, he turned sideways and kept making chopping gestures like playing table tennis, and crescent-shaped streams of light shot out. Looking at the crescent-shaped streams of light flying past in different arcs in the martial arts field, the expressions on the faces of Alliance leader Qin and the warriors of various factions became stiff. High consumption spiritual power martial arts, thrown out with a wave of the hand. The scene is simply too scary. Although Mo Shangfei tried to show off his flirtatious moves in the midst of the swords and sabers, he was hit mercilessly on his face, shoulders, hands, and feet by the subsequent streams of light, after dodging only 3 of them. Plop. In the end, after being hit, he fell to the ground with his forelegs on his back, blood spurted out of his face, and he rolled his eyes and fainted. Although the power of Li Qingyang's eye slash was not strong, it could not withstand the bombardment. Not to mention the 8th grade martial artist, even the 9th grade martial artist could not withstand it. Win. Second senior brother, win. Suzuomo and Shanqi jumped up excitedly. Although Li Qian had no expression on her face, she secretly said in her heart, after returning, "I have to practice ice slash." This woman, like Yi Xingchen, was only interested in the Yi Jingjing. As for the explosive fist and ice slash, although she had them long ago, she never practiced them. Seeing that his senior brother won, Xiao Zuji raised his head slightly and released his index finger from the trigger. He was always on high alert. If the battle just now was not favorable to the second senior brother, he would have killed Mo Shangfei immediately. Junior brother Yi. Xiao Zuji grinned and said, "Second senior brother won. TSK. The cold lord Yi said disdainfully, "You are so happy for winning an 8th grade martial artist?" His mood was calm, because he had not yet integrated himself into the Tegu sect, and did not have that kind of sense of honor of the sect. Xiao Zuji was different. He identified with the Tegu sect, the sect master, and his senior and junior brothers, so the joy brought by Li Qingyang's victory was no less than winning in person. Oh. Jun Changxiao stood up and bowed his hands apologetically, saying, "Fists and feet have no eyes. I'm really embarrassed to beat your disciples like this." The disciples of the Strongest Sect standing on the left had angry eyes, and some of them put their hands on the hilts of their swords. Lu Qian took 2 steps forward and stood side by side with the sect master. Her jade hands were also on the hilt of the sword, and her starry eyes flashed with coldness. "My sister Qian in the society is ruthless and doesn't talk much." Suzuomo and Shanqi also came over, their hands on the cold sword, glaring, not showing any weakness. Zyuzuji once again approached the Eightfold Realm. The crosses locked on the head of the disciple of Shenquan sect closest to the master. If he dared to move a step, he would immediately shoot him in the head. The atmosphere was tense and solemn. P.S. Thanks to 133 ********** 21. Haha. 135 ******** 62. Xingchen for the rewards, and continue to ask for recommendation votes. Chapter 115. Sect leader Jun is truly an awesome person. The disciples of Shenquan sect could not accept that Mo Shangfei was beaten unconscious, so they put their hands on the hilt of the sword, as if they were planning to attack. Lu Qian, Suzaomo and others were not afraid either. As long as you dare to make a move, we will definitely dare to draw our swords. At this moment, the Iron Bone spirit of the Tiguzheng sect was vividly displayed. Once in Hefeng village, a disciple was afraid of death and betrayed his sect to join the bandits, which made Jun Changxiao very disappointed. Now facing the Shenquan sect, the disciples are not afraid at all and dare to roll up their sleeves and confront the strong enemy, which makes him feel relieved. I don't expect my disciples to be so talented. I don't care whether my disciples are noble or not. I just hope that my disciples will be sincere and regard themselves as a member of the Tiguzheng sect, sharing life and death, wealth and honor. Master Jun, the third elder of Shenquan sect, said disdainfully, "What does your disciple mean?" Jun Changxiao said indifferently, "What your disciple means is what my disciple means. Don't pretend to be confused in front of me when you know the truth. The disciples are so bloody. If you are timid, what is the point of being a master, and what is the point of being a protagonist? Damn it, isn't it just a fight? My sword that is hard to put away has been thirsty for a long time." At that moment, Jun Changxiao wanted to take off his shirt, revealing the azure dragon on the left and the white tiger on the right. He slapped his chest with a big knife, combined the one yang finger and the lion's roar, and shouted, "Come here." No wonder he was calm. It turned out that he had the sword that is hard to put away to rely on. Qin Horan and the masters of various sects laughed. Dare to confront the elders of Shenquan sect like this, it will be difficult for you to leave Linquan sect with your disciples. At this time, Ziguancan came out to persuade Elder C, Master Jun, it's just a sparring match between disciples. There's no need to make it so tense. He was more inclined to Jun Changxiao, hoping that he could survive this disaster. "Thank you, City Lord," Qin Horan said indifferently. Elder C is one of the 8 elders of Shenquan sect. It's too presumptuous for a mere 9th-rate sect master to speak in such a tone. "Leader Qin." Jun Changxiao took out the sect's rank badge and said indifferently, "Please open your dog eyes and let me see clearly. My Tigu sect is now 8th rate." Qin Horan said angrily, "What did you say? Didn't you hear clearly?" Jun Changxiao raised his hand and raised his middle finger, looking up and said, "This seat says that you, the leader of the 100 Sects Alliance, are just a dog in front of Shenquan sect. It's okay to watch the joke." He won't say anything, but the weird fanning of the flames must be sprayed directly without following the procedure. As the head of a 6th-rate sect and the leader of the 100 Sects Alliance, how could Qin Horan tolerate being humiliated like this? His eyes were filled with murderous intent. TSK, the 5th elder of the Shenquan sect said, "An 8th-rate sect dares to humiliate the leader Qin so arrogantly. It seems that there is no dignity in Qingyang County. He also knows how to fan the flames, and he is more skilled in using it. Catcher." Qin Horan clenched his fists and stepped out. However, just as he took a step, he heard a bang sound from a distance. The stone slab a few inches in front of his feet was blasted with a fist-sized hole by the stream of light. Swish, swish, swish. The 3 elders of the Shenquan sect stood up one after another, looking coldly at the direction where the stream of light came from, and found a man standing on the high slope, holding a long smoking object in his hand. Ziguancan and the heads of various sects also looked over, and they were shocked. The speed of the incoming stream of light was too fast, and they almost didn't catch it. Was it a hidden weapon? The 3 elders of Shenquan sect looked at each other, with a rare solemnity in their eyes. From the speed and power of the stream of light, they judged that, if they did not have spiritual power to protect their bodies, they would be seriously injured if they were hit. Everyone Jun Changxiao sat on the chair, crossed his legs, clasped his fingers together, and put them on his legs, and said with a smile, "The one above is a disciple of my sect, proficient in 36,000 kinds of hidden weapons." The hidden weapon he held was one of them, called the Divine Power Fire Gun. Divine Power Fire Gun. Everyone looked confused. Obviously they had never heard of it. Jun Changxiao said again, "Alliance Master Qin, just now I was just a warning. If you think my Tegu sect is easy to bully, I don't mind letting my disciples reward you with another shot. There are 3 martial sects in Strongest Sect, and Qin is also a martial sect. Surrounded by strong men, he dared to let Zhiaozuji fire a warning shot. What a courage." Ziguancan secretly said, "Master Jun, you are really a great man." Qin, who was warned, looked very ugly. After a little consideration, he took back his leg. The light just hit him in front of him, and the power it exuded frightened him. It is difficult to judge whether the 88 type sniper rifle with low-grade crystal core condensed bullets can kill Wu Zhang, but one thing is certain, it is impossible to capture it quickly at a high rate of fire. It is easy to dodge an open spear, but it is difficult to guard against an arrow from the dark. Alliance leader Qin was also a little afraid that the disciple would use a hidden weapon again. What's more, why should he take the initiative in the matter between the Tegu sect and the Strongest Sect? Of course. Being described as a dog is hard to swallow. The Tegu sect and the 100 Sects Alliance had only parted ways before, but now they were completely at odds. Zhiaozuji fired a warning shot, shocking Alliance leader Qin and the sect leaders, as well as the disciples of the Strongest Sect. Even though they had the urge to draw their swords, they had no intention of doing so. After all, there was a Tegu sect disciple who was proficient in more than 30,000 kinds of hidden weapons. Humph. The third elder of the Strongest Sect said indifferently, "Master Jun is so arrogant, I would like to learn from your tricks." The purpose of this challenge is to embarrass the Tegu sect and let others know that even the disciples expelled from our sect must not be provoked. What about now? The disciples sent out were defeated by the Tegu sect disciples. The plot is different from what I thought, and it is definitely difficult to give up, so I simply indirectly challenged the sect leader Jun Changxiao as an elder. Qin and others sneered. The martial arts master Elder C challenged this guy, and if he accepted the challenge, he would definitely be beaten like a dog. Can I refuse? Jun Changxiao touched his nose and said, "He is not afraid of fighting. After all, he has a talisman that increases his power and a sword that is difficult to put away. The key is that, if he wins any mission, he will lose money." A big boss of a 6th-rate sect said indifferently, "You are the head of a sect, and the one who challenges you is an elder of the sect. If you refuse, you will be ridiculed by the people in the martial arts world." Oh. Jun Chang smiled and responded, "Damn it. Hurry up and give me a side quest, so that I can fight him openly." Unfortunately, there was no movement. The third elder said indifferently, "Master Jun, do you dare to fight?" His eyes and tone were full of disdain. Does he think he dare not fight? Jun Chang smiled secretly. What realm is he in? How much power is he? The system said, it is difficult to accurately measure the power of a first-grade martial arts sect, but at least more than 200,000 pounds. 200,000 pounds? More? This is too high. My power burst is about 2.5 W. Even if the power increasing talisman is 5 times stronger, it is still far behind his 200,000. The system poured cold water on him and said, the host and him are not only different in power, but also in realm. If we accept the challenge, the probability of winning is 0. The power gap between martial artists is not big, and it is not uncommon for martial artists to defeat opponents of higher levels. But if a martial artist is separated by a martial artist and fights a martial master, it will definitely be a suicide mission. Damn, it's a bit tangled. Should I waste the only seal opening talisman and use the sword that is difficult to put away? Ha ha ha. Just at this moment, laughter came from behind. Elder Master rode over with several disciples of Kangshan sect and said, Elder C, who is at the martial master level, is challenging Jun Xiao, who is at the martial artist level. Isn't that too much? Elder C's face darkened and said, my yunting. P.S. Thanks to Lonely Tiger, Ajun, come to fight, cause and effective love, and Minghail Anshan for the rewards. Please vote for recommendation. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116. It is impolite not to reciprocate. Sect leader Jun was struggling over whether to use the sword that was difficult to put away to fight the third elder of Strongest Sect. He did not expect that Elder Ma of Strongest Sect would rush over with his men at the critical moment. He secretly breathed a sigh of relief and said, "The seal opening talisman is saved." Elder Ma Yunteng came over and stood shoulder to shoulder with Jun Changxiao, saying with a smile, "Friend Jun, we didn't expect to meet again so soon after we parted in Qingyang City." Jun Changxiao bowed and said, "Qingyang County is too small, and we meet everywhere." Ha ha ha. Ma Yunteng laughed and said, "What a great phrase, we meet everywhere." The faces of Qin Horan and the leaders of various sects changed. Elder Ma called him friend Jun, and they were talking and laughing, which meant that the two had a deep relationship. Damn it. When did the small Tegu sect get on the big leg of Strongest Sect? Jun Changxiao really didn't get on the big leg, but he had once instructed Ma Yunteng, which made him quite grateful. When he heard that Strongest Sect wanted to fight, he hurriedly brought his men over. Not to mention, he came at the right time. Otherwise, once our great sect leader Jun draws out his 40-meter long sword, it will be very difficult to retract it. The three elders of Strongest Sect looked a little ugly. Strongest Sect came here at this time. Could it be to support Tegu Sect? Elder C. Ma Yunteng said lightly, "Although you and Jun Xiaoya are an elder and a sect leader, don't you feel ashamed to challenge a martial arts disciple?" Humph. Elder C said coldly, "I was just joking just now, Elder Ma, don't take it seriously." Strongest Sect came as a joke, but it would definitely not be a joke if it didn't come. Is that so? Ma Yunteng pretended to be enlightened and said, "I said, how could a martial arts sect challenge a martial arts disciple?" Alliance leader Qin and the sect leaders of various sects immediately realized that Strongest Sect was going to support Tegu Sect, and they had to sigh that it was good to have a big leg to hug. Elder C's eyes became gloomy and uncertain. The Strongest Sect, also a fifth-rate sect, is as strong as the Strongest Sect. If they really want to protect the Tegu Sect, they will probably return empty-handed this time. Elder C. Ma Yunteng said, "I have heard a little about the Linquan Sect. Are you from the Strongest Sect coming here to call for punishment?" Elder C said indifferently, "Don't get me wrong, Elder Ma. The Wei brothers have been expelled long ago and have nothing to do with our Strongest Sect. This trip is just to discuss with the Tegu Sect, not to call for punishment." The two of them talked casually, and it felt like a tit-for-tat. As expected of a fifth-rate sect, the confrontation was like two strong men fighting. Looking at Mo Shangfei, who was unconscious on the martial arts field, Ma Yunteng said, "If I'm not mistaken, your sect's disciples seem to have been defeated. Has the competition been decided?" Mentioning this, the faces of the three Strongest Sect elders became even uglier. Jun Changxiao took the opportunity to say, "Elder C, if you feel that this is not enough, we can send another disciple to play a friendly game." "No need," Elder C said with a sullen face. "If we are lucky, we can play another game someday." Mo Shangfei was the most outstanding inner disciple he brought, and he was beaten unconscious. If other disciples went up to fight alone, they would definitely not be able to gain an advantage. Elder C winked at the two elders behind him and said, "Elder Ma, the sect is busy with affairs, so I will take my leave first." As he said that, he walked away. Maybe he was so angry that he didn't even bother to say hello to Alliance leader Qin and others. Wait a minute. However, just as he reached the door, Jun Changxiao shouted. Elder C stopped, but didn't turn around, and said, "Master Jun, is there anything else?" Jun Changxiao also turned his back to him, lowered his head, and rubbed his fingers, saying, "The first principle of mighty Strongest Sect is that it is impolite not to return the favor. It has changed again, so I quickly wrote it down." Li Qingyang and Suzuomo closed their eyes slightly, memorizing the latest first purpose in their hearts. If conditions permit, they might write it down in a small notebook. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Elder C said in a deep voice. Master Jun, what do you mean by this? Jun Changxiao touched his nose and said, in a year, I will personally lead the disciples of the sect to the Strongest Sect to discuss the Dao. Ziguancan and the heads of various sects suddenly widened their eyes. Although the deadline was extended by 1 year, it was undoubtedly a challenge to the Strongest Sect. An 8th-rate sect challenged a 5th-rate sect, which was absolutely unprecedented, and will never be repeated. Elder C said disdainfully, Master Jun, to put it bluntly, your Tegu sect is really not qualified to come to my Strongest Sect to discuss the Dao. Indeed. The gap between the 8th-rate sect and the 5th-rate sect is too big. Jun Changxiao smiled lightly and said, just because you are not qualified now does not mean you will not be qualified in a year. Okay. Elder C said readily, our Strongest Sect will accept the challenge and wait for Master Jun and his disciples to come to Shenquan Mountain to discuss and exchange ideas in a year. But, his eyes darkened and he said, Master Jun, don't break your promise when the time comes. Jun Changxiao said, please rest assured, Elder C, the first purpose of our Tegu sect is civilization, harmony, honesty, and friendliness, and we will never do anything that goes against our promise. The corners of the mouths of all the warriors present twitched. Even, I really want to ask, Master Jun, how many first purposes do your Tegu sect have? Elder C said lightly, 1 year later, our Shenquan sect will be waiting for the Tegu sect to come. After that, he waved his long sleeves and left angrily with the elders and brothers. Originally, he was going to punish the Tegu sect in public, but the inner sect disciple who went out to fight was beaten to death, and he had to carry the blood back. This was too embarrassing. It would be strange if he wasn't angry. The people from Shenquan sect left, and the excitement was gone. The leaders of various sects came over one after another, smiling and saying goodbye to my Yunteng one by one. However, when Qin Horan just walked to the door, Jun Changxiao said, Leader Qin, after a while, my Tegu sect will also go to Heoki sect to exchange ideas and discuss the Dao. Humph. Qin Horan said lightly, Qin is waiting. After he and the leaders of various sects left, Ziguancan came over, first clasped his fists to Elder Ma, then shook his head and said, Leader Jun, you first made a 1-year agreement with Shenquan sect, and then made a war agreement with Heoki sect. Isn't this making enemies everywhere? Jun Changxiao said, City Lord Z, do you think my Tegu sect can live in peace with the 100 Sects Alliance and even Leader Qin? No. Ziguancan said. From the moment this kid called Qin Horan a dog, he knew that the two sides had completely torn their faces apart. If they met in the wild next time, they would be sorry for the bitter hatred between them if they didn't fight. Jun Changxiao shrugged and said, since we are enemies, why not make a battle agreement and let everyone know? Hearing this, Ziguancan suddenly realized and immediately raised his thumb and praised, Master Jun's move is brilliant. I admire you. I admire you. As long as the battle agreement with Alliance Leader Qin is spread to the martial arts world, no matter Heoki sect or Alliance members, they can't be too straightforward to cause trouble for Tegu sect, otherwise they will be criticized. This routine is very good. But Ziguancan also notes that the battle agreement can prevent him from being harassed by the Alliance sects, but he will have to fight sooner or later. Can Master Jun and his Tegu sect defeat the 6th-rate Heoki sect by then? PS. Please vote! Exclamation mark. Chapter 117 Either become stronger in the process of committing suicide or sing a song of coolness in the process of committing suicide. The people of Shenquan sect left, and so did Qin Horan and the leaders of various sects. Although they did not do the same thing, they all left with a lot of anger. One failed to teach Jun Changxiao a lesson, one was scolded like a dog, and the rest wanted to see the joke but failed, let alone have fun. Those other forces who came to join in the fun were shocked. Li Qingyang of the Tegu sect defeated an 8th grade martial artist with the cultivation of a 4th grade martial artist. This is absolutely amazing. What's even more amazing is that Jun Changxiao is not afraid of a behemoth like Shenquan sect and actually made a battle agreement to go to Shenquan sect to discuss and learn from each other in a year. Is he crazy? This is what all the warriors were thinking on the way down the mountain. They can understand that the disciples rely on special martial arts to win, but an 8th rate sect to challenge a 5th rate sect is definitely a joke. the leader of the Tegu sect is so bold that he dares to challenge the Shenquan sect. He really doesn't know his own weight. In my opinion, he can't even get past the Qin Alliance leader, let alone go to the Shenquan sect. That guy didn't give a specific time limit. Who knows when he will go to the Heoki sect to exchange ideas. Ever since this leader Jun became famous in the recruitment of 100 sects, our Qingyang County seems to have never been peaceful during this period. Many warriors discussed privately, but they were also looking forward to Jun Changxiao taking his disciples to the Heoki sect to exchange ideas as soon as possible. After all, this would add a little fun to their boring training career. What's more, it's not good for the world to be too peaceful. Outside the ruins of Lingquan sect, Jun Changxiao walked out, bowed his hands gratefully and said, "Elder Ma, thanks to your timely arrival, otherwise I really don't know how to face Shenquan sect." Ma Yunteng said, "After all, my Kangshan sect is also in the territory of Qingyang County, and naturally will not tolerate Shenquan sect to bully Jun Xiaoyao." Jun Changxiao said seriously, "I will remember your help today. If Elder Ma needs my Tegu sect in the future, I will definitely help you with all my strength." His principle is, if you are bad to me, I will be worse than you. If you are good to me, I will be better to you. What's more, the 5-rate Kangshan sect has a lot of background. If you can make friends with it, it will really be a good thigh. Jun Changxiao will not take the initiative to hug the thigh, but if the thigh stretches out, he will definitely hug it. If he is so cheap as to pull out the leg hair one by one, his brain will definitely be clamped by the door. Elder Ma smiled and said, "Master Jun, Ma really has something to ask for. Please speak." Jun Changxiao said. Elder Ma looked at the disciples behind him and said, "These useless disciples have encountered some troubles in martial arts. Please give them some advice, young friend Jun." Jun Changxiao said with a smile, "No problem." As he said that, he crushed the first grade insight talisman and began to listen to the Kangshan disciples talk about their martial arts problems one by one and gave the most correct advice. Well, he also practiced the Kangshan martial arts again. It's not his fault. With the blessing of the insight talisman, as long as he gets the practice method, he can comprehend it in minutes. Of course, this magical comprehension talisman has a drawback, that is, it is only applicable to the martial arts of the Xingyan continent, and has no effect on the martial arts of them all. Jun Changxiao wanted to comprehend the martial arts of them all with the insight talisman, but it was impossible. Fortunately, the 3 martial arts of them all that were refreshed during this period were not too difficult to learn. In just over 10 minutes, the disciples of the Kangshan sect were instructed one by one, and they fell into deep thought one by one, and their previous confusions in martial arts were also suddenly clear. Ziguancan next to him was stunned. The disciples of the 5th-rate sect were actually enlightened by the guidance of the 8th-rate sect masters. This scene is really unbearable to imagine. He came over and said embarrassedly, "Master Jun, Z also has a problem in martial arts. I wonder if you can help him solve it? Please speak." Jun Changxiao said with a smile. Just now in the martial arts arena, City Lord Z came out to persuade him to make peace. He knew that he was on his side, so he didn't mind and gave him guidance. Ziguancan talked about a boxing method he practiced and demonstrated it on the spot. Jun Changxiao was silent for a while, gave professional technical guidance, and slightly changed the way the boxing method was operated. Of course, he also learned martial arts. This improvement made City Lord Z stunned for most of the day. Finally, he gave a thumbs up and exclaimed, "Master Jun's slight change solved Z's years of confusion. You are truly a god." Jun Changxiao said humbly, "This is the only advantage of this seat. Martial arts are not worth mentioning. I will have to rely on City Lord Z in the future. Be arrogant when you should be arrogant, and build good relationships when you should build good relationships. After all, the road ahead is still long. If you offend the whole world, unless you have the halo of the protagonist, you will be in trouble sooner or later." Ziguancan was also an old hand, and he never failed to understand what he meant, so he said seriously, "Master Jun, please rest assured. As long as they are in the territory of Qingyang City, anyone who dares to touch your Iron Bone Sect will be an enemy of the 3.6 million people of Qingyang City." The city lord pulled out 3.6 million people at a disagreement. However, He never thought that one day in the future, the war would spread to Qingyang County, and tens of thousands of iron cavalry would come to Qingyang City. This man and his disciples would stand on the city wall and defend the 3.6 million people with their iron bodies. The disciples received instructions and needed to retreat for enlightenment, so Ma Yunteng said goodbye, but gave him 1 million taels before leaving as a thank you for the instructions. Jun Changxiao was surprised and said, 1 million taels in one shot, Elder Ma is really rich. Ziguangcan said, although the Kangshan sect lives in seclusion in Kangshan and rarely walks in the rivers and lakes, each city has industries and is managed by Elder Ma. The financial strength should not be underestimated. Sure enough, Jun Changxiao secretly said, whether in the past world or in the present world, people with the surname Ma are very impressive. The system said, go and call daddy. Get lost. Jun Changxiao led his disciples and Ziguangcan down the mountain and returned to Qingyang City. As for Xiao Zuji and Yi Xingchen on the high slope, they continued to practice. Not long after, the news that the Tigu sect had made a 1-year war agreement with the Shenquan sect spread throughout Qingyang County, which undoubtedly caused an uproar. Have you heard about Linquan Mountain? This is the first sentence after the warriors meet. If someone answers that they haven't heard of it, then they must be a dead fat otaku and will be despised by everyone. 1-year agreement. Not only spread in Qingyang County, but also spread to other counties. After the families and sects in various counties learned the news one after another, they not only remembered the obscure Tigu sect, but also unanimously agreed that this was a fancy way of courting death. In fact, Jun Changxiao dared to make a challenge, just like Xiao Zuji's 3-year agreement, and set a goal for himself, such as defeating a 5th-rate sect in a year. Not starting with the 8th rate or 7th rate, but directly setting the goal on the 5th rate sect. This is really a bit tough. If you don't get stronger while courting death, you will sing a song of fading while courting death. This is very exciting. After returning to the sect, Jun Changxiao summoned his disciples and said, in a year, you will go to the Shenquan sect to discuss and exchange ideas. Your task is to keep getting stronger and stronger. Tell me loudly whether you can do it. Yes. The disciples put their hands behind their backs and shouted loudly. OJK. Disband. PS. Please vote. Chapter 118. The Iron Bone School Towards Regularization. The 1-year agreement with Shenquan sect and the discussion with Heoki sect made the atmosphere of Tigu sect more serious, and the disciples worked harder in cultivation. But it was far from enough. Not to mention competing with the 5th-rate sect, the 6th-rate sect alone was like a mountain in front of them, which was very difficult to overcome. After returning, Jun Changxiao kept thinking about this problem, and finally came to the conclusion that the only way to make disciples stronger was to rely on elixirs and spirit stones. The system said, elixir and spirit stones are just auxiliary products, and the spiritual root qualifications of disciples determine everything. Not bad. Jun Changxiao agreed. Although elixirs and spirit stones can quickly improve cultivation, disciples with ordinary spiritual roots will sooner or later be powerless. Zuji can use the qualification transformation liquid to improve his spiritual roots, and other disciples must be able to do so. Jun Changxiao murmured. A bold idea arose in his mind, using the qualification transformation liquid to improve the quality of disciples' spiritual roots. In the purchased items column, there are 3 levels of qualification transformation liquid, which can easily allow a low-grade spiritual root disciple to enter the upper level. But it costs 150 contribution points to buy all 3. At the current contribution value limit, even if it is fully maximumed out, you can only buy 3 sets to help 3 disciples improve. Jun Changxiao murmured, with my current ability, I'm not able to train all of them. I can first let some of the disciples become stronger. Each sect has an inner sect division, which is equivalent to the elite and enjoys enough resources. Jun Changxiao wants to make some disciples stronger first, which is actually equivalent to dividing the inner and outer sect disciples. In a large sect, if you want to become an inner sect disciple, you must rely on your own qualifications and efforts to strive for it. Jun Changxiao wants to select a few first. Li Qingyang, who has a superior spiritual root, and the mysterious Lu Qian can be excluded. He quickly formulated the number of disciples to be trained. Zio Zuji, Suzaomo, Shinki, Li Fei and Yi Xingchen. The next day, Jun Changxiao officially announced that the Tegu sect has a division between inner and outer sect disciples from today, and the first batch of inner sect disciples is a total of 7. I treat you all equally. If you want to become an inner disciple, you must prove yourself with your strength. He added. Many disciples were not discouraged at all, and their belief in becoming stronger became stronger. Work hard. Work harder. Use your strength to become an inner disciple. The division of inner and outer sects once again stimulated the enthusiasm of the Tegu sect disciples to practice. After all, it was equivalent to giving them a goal to strive for. Master. After the disbandment, Lu Kai and Qian walked into the hall and said, since the inner and outer sects are divided, rewards and punishments must also be formulated, so that the junior brothers will be more motivated to practice, and will not slack off. Jun Changxiao leaned back in his chair and smiled. What do you think? Lu Kai and Qian said, conduct a strength assessment every month, a small disciple competition every 3 months, and a large disciple competition every year. This system is used in many sects. How many novel protagonists did not shine in various competitions in colleges and sects, and eventually became gods, demons, emperors, saints, and immortals? Adopted. Jun Chang smiled. The existence of the system has its rationality, and he is no exception. Moreover, didn't the former world's top students also stand out in the annual assessments, and become the existence that everyone looks up to? How are rewards and punishments? The winner of the annual disciple competition will become an inner disciple, and the top 9 will be given a certain reward. The same is true for the top 10 in the small competition every 3 months. Monthly strength test, the excellent ones will have corresponding rewards, and the bottom ones will do labor for a certain period of time. Hearing Lu Kai and Qian talk about various rewards and punishments so carefully, Li Qingyang couldn't help but secretly said, this is definitely the time when the eldest sister talked the most. Jun Chang smiled and said, okay. He adopted Lu Kai and Qian's suggestion, and formulated various tests and small and large competitions for the Tegu sect, and also thought seriously about the rewards. In the monthly strength test, the winner will receive 3 key gathering pills. In the small competition every 3 months, the champion will receive 10 key gathering pills, the second and third place will receive 5, and the 4th to 10th place will receive 3 each. The rewards for the annual competition are richer. The winner can not only become an inner disciple, but will also be rewarded with the first great cold edge sword and 20 key gathering pills. The top 9 will also receive different amounts of rewards. This is only a temporary reward system. When the sect becomes stronger and has more martial arts resources, it will definitely be continuously improved. Unlike other sects, as long as the disciples join, there will be various benefits, such as the sect's skills can be practiced at will. Each person has a first grade body shaping pill, and the meridian opening pill is distributed at a fixed time. Just this point alone, even the powerful sects are ashamed of themselves. Late at night, Jun Changxiao sat on the roof of the hall, took a puff of cigar, blew smoke rings and said, the division of disciples grades and the establishment of rewards and punishments represent the regularization of the sect. The big ship is setting sail. My goal is, holding a cigar and pointing to the sky, he said heroically, conquer the sea of stars. Bang. Plop. Oh my god. Li Fei, you kicked the leader down. Swish. In the dark and humid forest, a figure was running at full speed with a bent waist, then stuck in front of moss-covered stone, picked up a handful of grass leaves and scattered them, and then saw them drifting away with the wind. This is Zio Zuji, locating the wind direction and wind speed. Swish. Suddenly, he appeared from the stone, holding up the Type 88 sniper rifle, and suddenly pulled the trigger with his index finger, but after a bang, a stream of light burst out and accurately hit the head of the bear beast that was biting the corpse 800 meters away. There was no 8 times the realm, it was completely shoulder shooting. Very accurate, super accurate. Thump, thump, thump. Zio Zuji took several steps back due to the recoil. Shooting with a tripod on the ground, relying on the magic modified shoulder guard, can ignore it, but it is still not enough to stand up and shoot. After a while, he came to the killed low grade 5 beast, took out the crystal core with the cold sword, and a bright smile appeared on his face. Bang. There was a fist sound in another area. Yi Xingqian's fists were cold and fierce, and finally he brutally disemboweled a low-grade tiger beast. Blood and meat were splattered, and the whole person looked like a killing god. Xiao Zuji secretly said, "Junior brother Yi has a strong killing intention." He was forced to join the Tigu sect just after his rebirth, and suffered from the torture of happy football. Now that he is training in the wild, if Yi does not vent his anger and murderous intention, he may suffer internal injuries. Not counting the gun setting in Lingquan Mountain, the two have been training in the wild for 7 days. Relying on the Ijinjing, Xiao Zuji entered the 5th stage from the 4th stage of opening meridians, and Yi Xingqian entered the 9th stage. The realm improvement is only secondary. The important thing is that after 7 days of training, the actual combat experience of the two has increased. For example, Yi Xingqian, after this period of training, has perfectly adapted to his body. Relying on his martial arts experience from his previous life, he can take the lead in fighting against the enemy. However, due to his physical qualifications, his flexibility, reaction and various mechanisms are limited, and he will definitely be abused when challenging high-level beasts. As long as you comprehend the 2nd level of Taeksu and Sutra, your spiritual root qualifications can be upgraded from low grade to ordinary. Yi Xingqian said secretly. He is full of hope for his future, because he has Taeksu and Sutra and Yijin Sutra. Bang! Suddenly, gunshots rang out, and streamer bullets burst in. Yi Xingqian's pupils suddenly shrank. At that moment, he wanted to avoid it, but his body could not keep up with his thoughts. Bang! The streamer bullet flew past his ear and directly shot the low-grade 4th grade beast that pounced from behind on the spot. Plop! The huge body fell to the ground with a bang, and blood flowed. A drop of cold sweat oozed from Yi Xingqian's forehead, and in the 0.01 second just now, he calculated that if he died, it would take thousands or tens of thousands of years for him to be reborn next time. Junior brother Yi, Xiao Zuji steadied himself, put the gun on his shoulder, and said with a smile, "Take the crystal core. P.S. Please vote." Chapter 119, Opening the Mountain Gate and Accepting Disciples. On the 6th day after the battle at Lingquan Mountain, except for Liu Wanshi, all the disciples in the Tigu sect broke through to the 12th stage of opening meridians. Master, Li Qingyang came to report, in the past few days, more disciples have broken through to the martial arts disciples, and the number has reached 19. 19 martial arts disciples, 79 people with 12th stage of opening meridians. Very powerful. Unfortunately, the number of disciples in the sect is limited. Even if all of them become stronger, they cannot be promoted to the 7th level. Jun Changxiao murmured, "It's time to open the mountain gate and recruit disciples." The sect entered the formalization, and the number of disciples must be increased, so he went to Qingyang City, and went to the city lord's mansion that day. "Thank you, city lord." As soon as he entered the hall, Jun Changxiao got back to the point and said, "I want to recruit disciples. I wonder if I can borrow the public notice board." "No problem," Ziguancan said cheerfully. As a result, the Tigu sect recruitment advertisements appeared on the public notice boards in various districts and streets of Qingyang City, and each recruitment notice was different. East of the city, join the Tigu sect and create dreams together. South of the city, gather talents from all over the world, recruit virtuous and capable people. The Iron Bone Sect, you are trustworthy. North of the city, don't think you are not a good horse. In fact, you just lack a good horse trainer. West of the city, you want to fly. I will give you a pair of wings. The recruitment announcements of various sects in Xinjiang continent are either flowery or classical Chinese. The concise and unique recruitment of the Iron Bone Sect immediately attracted a lot of attention. Not only Qingyang City, Jun Changxiao relied on the relationship of the AI family and also started recruiting advertisements in Huayang City. But, after a few days of posting, there were very few warriors who signed up. Quack, a crow flew over the sky and called. Jun Changxiao, who was sitting in front of the mountain gate, held his cheek and said in a broken voice, "I have done a lot of big things during this period, why no one came to sign up?" Li Qingyang said, "Master, my sect has a war agreement with Shenquan Sect and Heoki Sect. It is at the cusp of the storm. Many people are afraid of being hesitant and dare not come to sign up." "That makes sense. Jun Changxiao said with a smile. In fact, this is not bad, at least it can exclude some idiots. Those who dare to sign up must not be afraid of trouble and really want to join the Tigu sect. Step. At this moment, a young man in white came up from the stairs. He had one hand behind his back and gently waved a folding fan with the other hand. The breeze blew away the scattered black hair, revealing a handsome face. Jun Changxiao and Li Qingyang looked over, and their first thought was, how coquettish. Swish. The young man in white closed his folding fan, walked to the registration desk, and said in a gentle and elegant manner, Master Jun, I have admired the Tiguzheng sect for a long time, and I have come to become your disciple. The direction of the bow was Li Qingyang. Jun Changxiao raised his hand, pushed the second disciple out, picked up a pen, and wrote the 4 words I'm the master on the paper, and then slapped it on his forehead. I just want to ask you, is it clear enough? Exclamation mark. Seeing this, the young man in white said embarrassedly, I'm sorry, I recognize the wrong person. Please don't blame me, Master Jun. Blame me? How is that possible? I have a lot of ideas. Jun Changxiao crossed his legs, dangling the brush between his fingers, and asked unhappily, what's your name? Longxiang, said the young man in white. Jun Changxiao was startled, and tore off the paper on his head. He carefully looked at the man and thought to himself, he is so polite, he must have received higher education, and his surname is Long, so his identity is definitely not simple. After a brief thought, he took out the entry form and asked, gender, male, age, just over 16 years old, realm, 9th level of opening meridians. Jun Changxiao didn't ask about spiritual roots, because as long as he liked it, low grade and top grade ones were meaningless. Stamped directly. Ding. Sect members. 103/500. Ding. Sect contribution value. 302/500. Jun Changxiao said, Qingyang, take your junior brother to the sect, arrange a room, and distribute school uniforms. By the way, don't forget to give him the sect's purpose and sect rules manual. Yes. Li Qingyang took Longxiang into the sect. Jun Changxiao continued to wait, while practicing Yi Jinjing. Not long after, a sturdy man came up, and wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, excuse me, are you still recruiting? Yes, Jun Changxiao said. The man came over, put his hands on the table, and said breathlessly, I want to join the Tiguzheng sect. Jun Changxiao held his chin, looked at him and said, you look in good physical condition. How come you are so tired just climbing a mountain? The man held his breath and said, I ran all the way from Huayang City in one breath. Jun Changxiao was surprised. The Tigu sect is hundreds of miles away from Huayang City. To be able to run all the way here in one breath, his physical condition must be great. Name. Yang Yuhe. For such a strong man, the name is quite nice. Age. 15. Jun Changxiao raised his head, looked at the size and height of the man, and then looked at the angular face, and asked in surprise, you are only 15 years old? Yang Yuhe scratched his head and said, others say I look older. You are not old, you just grow up a little fast. Jun Changxiao said, realm. Yang Yuhe whispered, 3rd stage of opening meridians. He is so strong, and he can run to the Iron Bone Sect in one breath. But he only has the 3rd stage of opening meridians. It seems that his body is well developed, but his spiritual roots are relatively poor. Brother, can I join? Yang Yuhe said weakly. Jun Changxiao stamped the seal of the headmaster, and pointed at the gate, saying, take the form, and go in by yourself. Someone will arrange everything for you. Ding. Sect members. 104/500. Ding. Sect contribution value. 303/500. Yang Yuhe took the entry form and walked towards the sect, not forgetting to turn back and thank him. Thank you, buddy. Boy. Jun Changxiao said indifferently, I have the seal of the headmaster, and you call me buddy? Yang Yuhe stopped suddenly, turned his head around, his face suddenly changed, and he hurriedly bowed and said, sorry, brother. Headmaster. More people came to sign up. But Jun Changxiao would also judge, based on his intuitive feelings first, and then decide whether to accept them. There were more than 10 people who signed up in one day. including Long Xiang and Yang Yuhe. Only 5 disciples were recruited, and all the others were eliminated. It's not that they don't want to accept them, but some of them are too weird. For example, the last person was actually a hunchbacked old man in his 70s or 80s. Maybe Li Qingyang is right. The sect is in the spotlight, and there are only a few warriors who dare to sign up. 10 days later, the Tigu sect only recruited 46 disciples. Jun Changxiao handed the matter over to Li Qingyang, and then called Su Xiaomo, Shan Qi, and Li Fei to the study and said, in view of your good performance during this period, each of you will be rewarded with a bottle of qualification transformation liquid. Qualification transformation liquid? Su Xiaomo said puzzledly, Master, what is this? After taking it, it can allow you to break through one quality from your original spiritual roots. Jun Chang smiled. He said it casually, but the 3 of them widened their eyes and opened their mouths. It should be more than enough to stuff 2 eggs. Su Xiaomo's spiritual root is a common one. His qualification transformation liquid is suitable for common grades, while Shan Qi and Li Fei is suitable for low grades. The 3 of them returned to the wing room, as if they had found a treasure, and drank it carefully. Not only did their spiritual roots improve instantly, but their cultivation was also driven, and they broke through to the 2nd grade martial arts apprentices. Amazing. They were happy, but Sect Master Jun spent 150 contribution points, and now only had 185 points. The system said, it's a bit of a waste to use contribution points on them. Jun Changxiao rolled his eyes and said proudly, I'm willing to use contribution points to cultivate such a strong disciple who is not afraid of Shengquan sect in Lingquan Mountain. What's your business? PS. Thanks to EC and 170 ******** 77 for the reward. Please vote. Chapter 120 There are too many bad guys in my sect. I want to go home. Transforming the qualifications of Su Xiaomo and the other 2 was just the beginning. Jun Changxiao kept 2 bottles of contribution points for Xiao Zuji and Yi Xingchen, and trained them immediately after they returned. Li Qingyang and Lu Qian, because they did not have a higher qualification transformation liquid, could only temporarily give them key condensation pills to help them quickly improve their cultivation. There were more than 100 disciples, and Jun Changxiao could not treat them equally. Yes, that was right. Those who wanted to do something bad should go to face the wall quickly. He decided on a few main disciples first, and also hoped that there would be amazing performances on Shengquan Mountain in a year, to tell the world loudly that Artigas Heng sect is not simple. In fact, Jun Changxiao could buy 1 less bottle, because Yi Xingchen, who was practicing in the wild, comprehended the Taixu and Sutra to the 2nd level, and his spiritual root qualifications went from low grade to ordinary. His realm also broke through from the 9th stage of opening meridians to the 12th stage in one fell swoop, and he was only 1 step away from becoming a martial arts apprentice. Ha ha ha. Sitting cross-legged in the cave, feeling the sublimation of qualifications and the improvement brought by all aspects of his body, Yi Xingchen laughed unscrupulously. When I strengthen my body and enter the divine spiritual root, that will be the day when I will return to the peak. He clenched his fists and said with a cold look, by then, I will make sure that the sky can no longer cover my eyes, the earth can no longer bury my heart, and the so-called eternal empress will be wiped out. Hoo-hoo. A special aura permeated his body. This was the kingly aura of the former martial emperor. Unfortunately, his soul was frustrated in his previous life, and he was nurtured in the center of the earth for thousands of years. After his might broke through the ordinary spiritual root, it only showed a little bit. Xiao Zuji, who was awakened by the laughter, said, Junior brother Yi, why are you smiling foolishly in the middle of the night? Humph. Yi Xingchen snorted coldly, and thought to himself, vulgar mortal. Roar. Suddenly, there was a roar outside the cave, and then the ground shook. Not good. Xiao Zuji rushed out of the cave with a 88 Type sniper rifle. In the distance, a huge black bear stood up, and the thick tree was cut in half by the bear's paw. Yi Xingchen walked out, took a look at the big guy, and said disdainfully, rubbish. Swish. Xiao Zuji raised his gun, and locked it on the black bear's head. Slow. Yi Xingchen raised his hand, stood in front of him, and said in a cold voice, leave it to me. Ziozuji said, "Junior brother, this is a black demon bear comparable to a peak martial artist." Roar. The black demon bear waved its arms, smashed the big tree beside it, and roared angrily at the two of them. The strong wind whistled, and brought a disgusting stench. Rubbish. While Yi Xingchen was speaking, he took 2 steps back and said, "I'm too lazy to do it." Roar. Just at this moment, the black demon bear rushed over with its huge body, and the trees and rocks along the way were either knocked away or smashed. Bang. The sound of gunfire rang out in the mountains and forests. We learned to meow together. Meow 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 meow. Act like a spoiled child in front of you. Oh meow 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 meow. Early morning, martial arts arena. The modified speakers are playing a brand new divine song, and all the disciples of the Tigu school dance to the rhythm. Liu Wanshi follows the melody of the music, sometimes clenching her fists, puffing her lips in front of her cheeks, and sometimes nodding her head, looking very cute. Seeing that little girl dancing happily, Jun Changxiao murmured, Dudu was born in the wrong world. If she was on Earth, she would definitely be so cute that a bunch of fat otakus would fall in love with her. Suddenly, he remembered something and said, since there are guns in the mall, are there rockets, spaceships, etc.? Yes. The system said. Jun Changxiao was overjoyed. But, the system poured cold water as usual. Only higher level mouths can be refreshed, so the host should retract the immature idea of crossing the universe and returning to Earth. Jun Changxiao said disapprovingly, as long as there is such a thing, there is a possibility of returning to Earth. The system said, there is spiritual power in the high level martial arts world, and the lifespan of creatures is much longer than that of Earth. Why does the host have to go back? You don't understand. Jun Changxiao looked at the sky in the distance and said with infinite longing, that's my home, where I have my friends, my first love, and relatives. It seems that I don't have any relatives. The system said, so the meaning of the host's return to Earth is to take the cultivation of the higher level martial arts world there to show off. Hate it, you have to expose people. Of course. Jun Changxiao said with a smile, American blockbusters are full of Iron Man and Hulk, saving the world all the time. When I go back, I'll call all the people from the Women's Federation over and beat them one by one to see how awesome they are. The system said speechlessly, that's just a movie. What's more, if these superheroes really exist, the entire Earth and even the Milky Way will probably belong to Smector. This is a complaint. Jun Changxiao said with a smile, sharp. Oh, right. The system said again, in the Jakarta Asian Games League of Legends exhibition match, your country's players defeated the South Korean team 3-1 to win the gold medal. As a former League of Legends bronze player, Jun Changxiao was stunned. The system said, the career of a game player is very short. It is worthy of respect to be able to let the host country's flag fly in the 4-year event. Swish. Jun Changxiao tore off his long gown with one hand, rushed into the martial arts field, followed the disciples, and danced to the beat, happy like a 5 or 6-year-old child. Baby, let's have fun. My heart is pounding, and I'm obsessed with your smirk. If you don't say you love me, I'll meow. After the morning exercises, the disciples practiced separately. The newly initiated disciples, such as Long Xiang and Yang Yuhe, all looked ugly, and they obviously haven't adapted to the shameful early morning exercises. I was actually dancing just now. I was actually twisting just now. Xiang, Yuhe. Suzuyomo waved her hand and said with a smile, come on, senior brother will take you to training. Oh. Long Xiang, Yang Yuhe and other new disciples followed, and then entered the training room, and went into the muscle shaping room one by one to shape for 2 hours. In the evening, this group of new disciples, with no desire to live, collapsed on the martial arts field. The next day, after they were in high spirits, they began to learn to play football. As a result, after being trained by Li Fei to catch the ball with their faces, they squatted in the corner like children, covering their faces and crying loudly. Mom, there are too many bad guys in the sect. I want to go home. Go home? Not exist. From the moment they stepped into the Tigus Heng sect, they were destined to either become stronger in the sea of fire and swords, or sing the song of the dead in the abyss of hell. After the new disciples entered the sect, they were given a copy of Yi Jingjing and Shaping Dan, and began to learn to integrate into the life of the sect. Jun Changxiao then began to think about how to quickly increase the contribution value. The fastest way to earn contribution points is to recruit all the disciples, so that you can get 350 to contribution points and open the sect mission. But it's not easy to recruit. Li Qingyang sat outside for 2 days, but no one came. Headache. Jun Changxiao rubbed his temple. Master. Wei Lao walked into the hall and said, the planted medicinal herbs have sprouted. So fast? Jun Changxiao was quite surprised. Calculating the time, it has only been more than 10 days. Wei Lao said, medicinal herbs are not like crops. If you cultivate them with your heart, they will feel it and express their gratitude by growing rapidly. So metaphysical? Jun Changxiao said with interest. Old Wei, you are not simple. Can you tell me your story? Old Wei laughed at himself and said, I'm just a 3rd grade medicine apprentice. I have been mediocre for most of my life. What stories can I have? Jun Changxiao said, Old Wei is very professional in cultivating medicinal materials. I'm only a 3rd grade medicine apprentice? I will never believe it. Old Wei did not want to say more on this topic and said, I need a few disciples to fetch spring water from the mountains to irrigate the medicinal materials. Everyone has privacy. Jun Changxiao would not ask if they did not say it. He immediately arranged for new disciples such as Long Xiang and Yang Yuhua to help Old Wei fetch water from the mountains. Master. At this time, Li Qingyang hurriedly walked in from outside and said solemnly, the elders of Strongest Sect bring disciples to discuss and exchange ideas. Strongest Sect? Jun Changxiao had never heard of it. Li Qingyang said, it is one of the 4 major and 7 stream sects in Qingyang County. The master is called Meng Xingde, and the one who brought the disciples to fight is the 7th elder. Jun Changxiao touched his chin and said, this Qiu Strongest Sect should be a member of the 100 Sects Alliance, right? Yes. Li Qingyang said. P.S. Thanks to Kansan Huanying, Xingkang Sakura, 150 *********** 77. Li Bangsan, Dangnian Mingyu, Potato, MOU for the rewards, please meow. Chapter 121, Challenge from the Nebula Sect. The Strongest Sect of the 100 Sects Alliance came to discuss with him. Even a fool could see that this must be a dirty deal with Alliance Leader Qin. Alliance Leader Qin. Jun Changxiao rubbed his fingers and said with a smile, we have a war agreement. If you are not convenient to take action, then send other sects to do it. It's very particular, very particular. Ding. The side quest is triggered. The system prompt sounded. Damn. The quest is finally here. Jun Changxiao hurriedly opened the data panel. The side quest is defeat the 7th elder of the Strongest Sect. Song K0/1, elite quest. There is also a second quest. The content is that the disciples abuse the disciples of the Strongest Sect 0/5. If you don't come, it's fine. If you come, too. Cool. Jun Changxiao waved his sleeves, stood up and said, quickly invite the elders of the Strongest Sect to come in. Yes. Li Qingyang turned and left, puzzled in his heart. The headmaster looks very happy. Lack of contribution points. Someone delivered it to the door, and there were 2 tasks. Of course, the headmaster Jun was happy, and he wanted to turn on the speakers and dance the seaweed dance. Martial arts arena. The disciples of Tegu sect stopped practicing and stood behind the headmaster. Jun Changxiao sat on the chair that was brought out with 1 foot on his back and a smile on his face, could not be stopped. Opposite, the elder of Strongest Sect stood proudly with his hands behind his back. There were 5 disciples standing behind him. Judging from the aura they exuded, they must be martial artists and their ranks were not low. In Jun Changxiao's eyes, all these people had contribution points floating above their heads. The system said, 5 disciples, from left to right, 5th grade, 4th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, and 2nd grade martial artists. TSK. Jun Changxiao thought to himself, it's worthy of being a 7th rate sect. The disciples are awesome. Master Jun. Song K bowed and said lightly, your disciples took the top 4 places in the sect competition. My Strongest Sect admires them very much. Today I brought my disciples here to learn from them. Strongest Sect also participated in the sect competition. but sent out disciples with low cultivation levels, and they were eliminated in the last few rounds. It's not that they don't want to send higher level disciples, but there are clear regulations in the sect competition that a disciple can only participate in one session and the age must not exceed 18 years old. Jun Chang smiled and said, meet friends through martial arts, exchange ideas and discuss the truth. Why don't you welcome us? Pa pa pa. All the disciples applauded in unison to welcome him. Song K's mouth twitched, and he quickly said seriously, Song has brought 5 inner disciples of my Strongest Sect this time, hoping to have 5 one-on-one exchanges with your disciples. What do you think, Sect Master Jun? Does this guy think that only Li Qingyang is strong in my Tegu sect and deliberately adopt multiple people and multiple battles? Jun Chang smiled and said, okay, Qingyang. He waved his hand and said, go and fight with the guest, who came from afar. Yes. Li Qingyang stepped out, but heard the sect master whispered, beat him up so hard that he cries for his parents. The side quest is to beat up the disciples of the Strongest Sect. If they are defeated easily, it will definitely not meet the requirements. Li Qingyang nodded and walked to the center of the martial arts arena. Song K also sent out a disciple, a second grade martial artist with the lowest cultivation level among the 5. Xianji's horse race? Jun Changxiao said disdainfully, these are the tricks left over from my Chinese ancestors, and you still have the nerve to show them off. Pa. He snapped his fingers, and the disciple brought tea. Li Qingyang. Jia Tengying. Puff. Jun Changxiao spat out a mouthful of tea. The two sides announced their names, and the duel began. Swish. Jia Tengying took the initiative and rushed over, his 2 fingers condensed with spiritual light, and after getting close, he poked with a swish swish swish. This is a mid-level ordinary martial art, the quick shadow finger. Judging from the speed and the shadow of the finger, this person has been immersed in this move for a long time, otherwise it would be impossible to reach such a level. Li Qingyang put his hands behind his back, and his feet swayed regularly, dodging the shadows of the fingers one after another. Mo Shangfei, who defeated the Strongest Sect, can only be described as easy to deal with this second grade martial artist. Even if he keeps poking until dark, he may not be able to poke the corner of his clothes. Jia Tengying knew that there was a huge gap between him and his opponent, but as a warrior, he would never admit defeat, so he continued to use the quick shadow finger to poke wildly. Pa. Suddenly, Li Qingyang, who was dodging, grabbed his wrist with one hand and lightly pushed him out with his shoulder. Jia Tengying retreated more than 10 steps, and before he could stabilize himself, a hand grabbed his collar and then suddenly lifted him up. Plop. He took off at 160 degrees, fell to the ground, then took off at 160 degrees in the opposite direction, and fell to the ground again. Bang, bang, bang. Li Qingyang stood on the martial arts field, with one hand behind his back, and with the other hand, he grabbed Jia Tengying's collar, and threw him left and right. After a while, he was thrown around and dizzy, with a crooked mouth and slanted eyes. Ding. Disciple abused 1/5 of the disciples of Strongest Sect. Li Qingyang's bullying met the requirements of abuse, and one task was completed. Qingyang, it's enough to exchange ideas. Jun Chang smiled. Li Qingyang dragged Jia Tengying, who was foaming at the mouth, to the edge of the martial arts field, and threw him out. Second brother won. The disciples cheered immediately. The new disciple saw a martial artist being abused like this, and immediately worshipped the second brother. Humph. Song K snorted coldly. The disciple's defeat was within his expectations. Li Qingyang has already gone to the battle, and the Tegu sect has lost its outstanding disciple. The next 4 rounds will be controlled by our Strongest Sect. Indeed, we controlled the whole field, because the second disciple who went up was kicked all over the martial arts field by Li Fei, and every stone slab under his feet felt the fear of being dominated by his feet. In the end, he ran exhausted, bruised, and swollen, and fell to the ground spitting. Ding. Disciple abused 2/5 of the Strongest Sect disciples. After hearing the prompt, Jun Changxiao spread his hands and said, sorry, my disciple was a bit heavy. Song K's old face fell. That Tegu sect disciple, who was obviously only a second grade martial arts disciple, how could he abuse his third grade martial arts disciple so miserably? If he knew that this was a man who had kicked down even the head of the sect, he would understand. It's not a big problem. It's not a big problem. There must be not many disciples with the ability to fight across levels, as long as they win the next 3 games. Thinking of this, Song K raised his hand. The disciple who reached the 4th grade martial arts disciple walked onto the martial arts field. Jun Changxiao originally planned to let Shinki or Suzumo fight, but before he opened his mouth, 2 people appeared at the gate. Who? Zhao Zuji and Yi Xingchen. The 2 had disheveled hair, dirty faces, and their school uniforms were torn into strips, obviously scratched by the claws of fierce beasts. Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched and said, "You were so majestic when you went out. How come you are refugees when you come back?" "Master, we are back." Zhao Zuji grinned, revealing a row of neat and white teeth. "Just right." Jun Changxiao waved his hand and said, "Iron Sect came to discuss Taoism, so you will fight the 3rd opponent?" Ah. Zhao Zuji was dumbfounded. He and Yi Xingchen went deep into the mountains and forests, but were chased by a group of fierce beasts. In the end, they escaped with their lives, and then returned to the sect. They fought with others, before they had a rest. This is too exciting! Exclamation mark. PS. Thanks to O for the reward. Please vote. Chapter 122 I will make you suffer. Zhao Zuji was arranged to fight as soon as he came back, which made him feel very exciting. Yi Xingchen had no interest at all and was going to take a shower. "Xingchen!" Jun Changxiao shouted, "You play in the 4th game. Let me see how much your strength has improved after this field training." Damn. You actually let this emperor fight with a brat. Although he was not happy, he still stopped and looked at the disciples of Iron Sect, his eyes showing strong disdain from a martial emperor. Song K glanced at the 2 of them and said lightly, "Master Jun, your 2 disciples look very tired. Isn't it a bit too casual to send them to the field?" "It was very casual to begin with," Jun Changxiao said. This tone, this meaning. It seems that he didn't take Iron Sect seriously at all. "You." Song K suppressed his anger and said lightly, "If Master Jun doesn't think that my Iron Sect is intentionally bullying people, you can let them fight." Haha. It must be what he wanted. Zhao Zuji didn't even change his school uniform. He dragged his dirty body to stand on the martial arts field and bowed, saying, "Zhao Zuji." The Iron Sect disciple who was fighting looked at him and said, "So you are the champion of the sect competition." Then, he bowed disdainfully and said, "Zhangyi." In his opinion, this guy who didn't open his meridians was really lucky to win the championship. If he participated in the competition, he would definitely beat him like a dog. Not to mention, during the sect competition, with Zhao Zuji's strength, it might be a tragedy to face a 4th grade martial artist. But now, bang, 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 bang. After the fight began, the Iron Sect disciple named Zhang Yi was beaten dizzy and spinning on the martial arts field by Zhao Zuji's strong body and strength. At this time, if you turn on the speakers and play a divine song about imitating a cat's meow, it will be very appropriate. Plop. Zhang Yi turned around for a while, foaming at the mouth, and fell to the ground. As for the proud and disdainful expression just now, it is destined to be replaced by a dead fish face for a long time, because the psychological shadow of the beating has been left. Ding. Disciple abused 3/5 of the Iron Sect disciples. Not bad, not bad. Jun Chang smiled and said with satisfaction, "After a period of experience, the improvement is very significant." After dealing with the opponent, Zhao Zuji walked out of the martial arts arena and said, "Master, I'm going to take a shower." Go, go. Jun Chang smiled. Song K was dumbfounded. The disciple who went to the battle was a 4th grade martial artist, and the Tigu sect disciple had only opened the meridians at the 6th stage from the burst of breath. Zhao Zuji's cultivation is weak, but since the meridians were opened, he can gather spiritual power in his body, and with the high intensity tempered body, his combat power will definitely soar. 4th grade martial artist. Sorry, it's just a sandbag for beating. Losing 3 out of 5 games, the Iron Sect, who came to challenge the sect on the orders of Alliance leader Qin, has lost face in front of the Tigu sect. Jun Chang smiled and said, "Elder Song, do you still want to spar?" "Spar?" Song K said in a deep voice. It's already a loss, but if we win the next 2 games, with a score of 2-3, we can save some face. Xingqian, go on stage. Jun Chang said with a smile. Xingqian snorted coldly, walked onto the martial arts arena, pointed at the 5th grade martial artist who was supposed to be the last to appear, and said disdainfully, "You, get up." He directly chose the strongest one. Brother Chen is very social. The disciple who was said to be the disciple of the Strongest Sect glanced at Song Kai, and after getting the instruction, he walked onto the martial arts arena, looking at Xingqian with strong contempt in his eyes. He was the strongest of the 5 disciples brought by Song Kai. He was able to break through to the 5th grade martial artist before the age of 20, and he was indeed qualified to look down on others. But he looked down on Suzaomo and Shanqi, no problem, but he looked down on Yi Di, who was once one of the 10 great martial emperors. This is a big problem. Xingqian, who was not interested in the fight between the little brats, saw that his eyes were full of contempt and disdain, and his whole face suddenly became gloomy. He clenched his fists, and said in a cold voice, "Boy, I will make you suffer." Bang! The Strongest Sect disciple bent his arms, clenched his fists, and a wave of air burst out, instantly tearing his shirt, revealing his fancy tattoos, which was extremely fierce. Jun Changxiao shook his head and said, "If it didn't tear my pants, bad review, and if it didn't have Peppa Pig tattoos, bad review." TSK. Xingqian disdained to care. Song Kai said indifferently, "Master Jun, my disciple is proficient in 32 sword techniques. I wonder if we can use weapons to spar." "Yes," Jun Changxiao said with a smile. Xingqian's mouth twitched. Facing a 5th grade martial artist who is carrying a weapon, at least you have to give me a weapon to fight with. What a pity. Jun Changxiao didn't intend to give him a weapon, but instead clasped his 10 fingers and said, "My disciple is proficient in 72 grappling techniques, and he has always been barehanded against the enemy." The expression on Xingqian's face suddenly became wonderful. The Strongest Sect disciple waved his hand, and summoned his precious sword from the space ring. The sword was not long, similar to a machete, but the blade was shining, and it looked very sharp. Liu Kanlang. He gave his name. Xingqian did not announce his name, but thought about how he could fight a 5th grade martial artist with weapons with his bare hands. Swish, swish, swish. At this moment, Liu Kanlang swung his knife, and the shadow of the knife filled his body. Then he raised the knife with one hand, standing on one leg. He is indeed proficient in the 32 sword techniques. Professional enough. Good. Jun Changxiao clapped his hands. Pa pa pa. The disciples behind him also applauded, as if watching that guy performing a knife show. Liu Kanlang said lightly, "If you don't announce your name, then I will use my knife." Rubbish. Xingqian said lightly. Swish. At this moment, Liu Kanlang took a step forward, and the machete in his hand swung wildly, instantly interweaving dense knife shadows, which looked very bluffing. Xingqian retreated step by step, avoiding the sweeping knife intent, while looking for the opponent's flaws. The improvement of his spiritual roots and the cultivation level reached the 12th stage, allowing him to fit more with his body, not only to capture the knife shadow, but also to avoid it in advance. But once the opponent's 32-way sword technique was deployed, it would not only form an attacking momentum, but also protect the body tightly, making it difficult to find a flaw and counterattack. Swish, swish. Liu Kanlang's sword momentum accelerated, and more sword shadows appeared. Xingqian realized that, if he could not be dealt with in the fastest time, once he formed a net-like attack, he would have to passively take the chop. Damn. A mere 5th grade martial artist made this emperor helpless. The anger in Xingqian's body rose, and the little bit of kingly aura that had just recovered burst out instantly. Who? The breath spread invisibly. Liu Kanlang, who was performing the sword technique, was enveloped by it, and suddenly stopped, with fear in his eyes. At that moment, his soul seemed to fall into hell, his mind suffered endless torture, his hands softened, and the machete he was holding fell to the ground with a clang. This fearful atmosphere from the oppression of Emperor Wu was only a flash. When Liu Kanlang came to his senses and realized that the knife had fallen and was about to pick it up, he saw that Xingqian had already raised his waist with the machete in his hand. "Boy," Yi Di said coldly, "you can't even hold the knife, and you dare to play knife skills in front of me." Swish. As he spoke, the knife swung and chopped. Puchy. A deep knife mark was directly cut on Liu Kunlong's chest, and blood splattered. You. His face became ferocious. Yi Xingchen stepped forward and said coldly, "Today I will let you know that knives are used to cut people, not for juggling." Swish. Another knife was chopped down, and blood splattered. Liu Kunlong had another knife mark on his chest. Enduring the severe pain, he turned around and ran away. Yi Xingchen strode after him, and the knife fell. Puchy. Puchy. One knife, two knives, three knives. Poor Liu Kunlong. His equipment dropped, and was picked up by Yi Xingchen, who hacked him back, and finally he collapsed on the ground covered in blood. PS. Thanks to Anvi for the reward. Please vote for recommendation. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123. I kill, I kill, I kill, kill, kill. If it was someone else, Liu Kunlong would definitely not be chopped to the ground. At most he would be beaten up. But the opponent was Yi Xingchen. Who is this? One of the 10 great martial emperors. In his previous life, he not only killed people, but also killed many people. The bones piled up could form a mountain. He is definitely a ruthless character, and he kills without blinking an eye. Thinking of the embarrassing situation of being chased by a group of ferocious beasts before, and now being despised by a junior, Yi Xingchen's anger turned into murderous intent, and he raised his knife, and chopped down again. Xingchen. Jun Changxiao stopped him and said, "It's just a competition. There's no need to kill." Yi Xingchen stopped chopping, threw the machete on the ground, snorted coldly, and said, "Master, don't let me play this kind of garbage in the future. It's a waste of time." After that, he turned around and went to take a shower. You can actually chop back a 5th grade martial artist. Junior brother Yi is amazing. The disciples exclaimed. Suzuomo was surprised and said, "Junior brother has grown so fast." If he were to appear, he could use his speed to fight Liu Kunlong, but he certainly couldn't do it like Yi Xingchen did with a knife. Jun Changxiao held his chin and said, "It seems that there was a wave of air coming just now." Because of the distance, he caught the kingly and domineering aura that Yi Xingchen had just released. Although it was fleeting, he felt it was creepy. The system said, "This is the power of the soul." The power of the soul? A warrior with strong soul power can form the power of the soul to shock others. Jun Changxiao said, "You mean, Xingchen just exploded the power of the soul and shocked Liu Kunlong's mind, so the knife fell?" "Yes." The system said. Looking at the gradually receding back, Jun Changxiao secretly said, "My disciple is a little bit unusual. More than one thing." The system said. Liu Kunlong could have fought with Yi Xingchen, but he was disturbed by the kingly and domineering aura and ended up being chopped to the ground. It's not that he is not strong, it's that the opponent is too evil. Song Kai, who was standing behind, took back the condensed spiritual energy, his eyes filled with anger. If Yi Xingchen had dared to chop him down just now, he would have attacked desperately. After all, Liu Kunlong was the most valued in a disciple of the Strongest Sect. Jun Chang smiled and said, "Elder Song, Strongest Sect has lost 4 of the 4 competitions. Is it necessary to continue?" This sentence was very hurtful, and it hurt Song Kai's heart. He said in a deep voice, "Continue." If he stopped now, he would be beaten 4-0, but if he insisted on continuing the competition, it would be 5-0. Because the next player was Liu Qian. This ruthless and taciturn iceberg beauty released a tsunami-like spiritual power as soon as she came on the court, directly scaring the Strongest Sect disciples to the ground. Bang, bang. The spiritual power turned into a small fist and hit the guy's chest wildly. In the end, he was beaten so hard that blood spurted out and he fainted gloriously. The corners of the mouths of the Tigu sect disciples twitched one by one. It turns out that our beautiful senior sister is more fierce than Yi Xingchen when she starts fighting. New disciples such as Long Xiang and Yang Yuhua secretly said, "The senior sister is the most brutal person in the sect, and we must not provoke her." Ding. Disciples abused 5/5 of the disciples of Iron Sect. Ding. The side quest is completed, and the host obtains 50 contribution points. Ding. Contribution value to the sect. 230/500. Comfortable. Jun Changxiao stood up and bowed with a smile on his face, saying, Elder Song, thank you for letting me. Song K's face darkened. When he came here, he patted his chest and promised Kinhoran that he would definitely kill the Tegu Sect's spirit. As a result, he lost all 5 competitions and was shaved bald. If this news gets out, it will definitely be embarrassing. Elder Song, Jun Changxiao said again, I see that you look unhappy, and it seems that you are not convinced of the loss. How about this, you and I have a competition. Song K's expression was suddenly stunned. The disciple was defeated, which made him unbearable. He was still thinking about whether to find that guy to spar with him, but he didn't expect that the other party would take the initiative to speak. Very good, very good. Song K bowed and said, since Master Jun said so, Song will respectfully obey your order. As he said that, he walked to the center of the martial arts arena, fed Liu Kunlang a healing pill, and then dragged him away. Jun Changxiao walked over and thought to himself, how much strength does this guy have? About 30,000. The system said, only 30,000? Jun Changxiao disdained to care. Although he is only an 8th grade martial artist now, his strength has long exceeded 20,000. The system said, this elder has mediocre qualifications, but he is a regular 1st grade martial artist. The host has undergone qualification transformation and muscle shaping, so he is naturally not an ordinary person. That's right. Jun Chang smiled. Not only him. Disciples who practice Yijinjing, take shaping pills, and go through the shaping room have far stronger combat power than ordinary people. When they cultivate their spiritual roots and cultivation, they will be strong. Just thinking about it makes people's blood boil. The master is going to make a move. When Jun Changxiao stood in the middle of the martial arts arena, the disciples of the Tegu sect immediately started to discuss. After all, the last time the master made a move was when he abused Ma Yangming. The elder of the Iron sect is a martial artist. Can the master win? A new disciple whispered. Nonsense, he will definitely win. The disciples who had joined the sect early had 100% unconditional trust in Jun Changxiao. The master will win. The master will win. Liu Wanshi raised her fist and shouted. For a moment, the disciples of the Tegu sect were inspired and shouted in unison to cheer for the master. Humph. Song K hummed lightly, but on the surface he bowed gracefully and said, Master Jun, are we going to compete with weapons or fists and feet? Fists and feet. Jun Chang smiled. Song K said, okay. As he spoke, a heavy spiritual power condensed between his palms, and his momentum was quite good. In the Xingyan continent, martial arts apprentices are also called the condensation spirit stage, which means to condense spiritual power and open up a cyclone in the Danshan. Martial arts masters are called the controlling spirit stage, because martial artists who have reached this level are more skilled in the absorption of spiritual power and the use of spiritual energy. Although Song K is mediocre in all aspects, he is a genuine martial arts master after all. The spiritual energy bursting in his palms is far better than martial arts apprentices. Boy, when the duel begins, I will defeat you as quickly as possible in front of your disciples, to save face for my Iron sect. Song K said, Master Jun, can we start? It's time to start. Jun Changxiao said with a smile. Swish. Song K strode forward, clenched his right hand into a fist, and the spiritual energy in the cyclone instantly poured into it, and the airwave visible to the naked eye suddenly appeared. It was quite urgent. Jun Changxiao smiled faintly, raised his right palm, and crossed the void, saying, I will chop. Swish, a stream of light in the shape of a crescent moon burst out. Song K raised his eyebrows, and his right fist with a strong wind directly blasted over, and violently broke it on the spot, his eyes full of strong disdain. However, when he looked at Jun Changxiao, he saw that the guy's left and right hand seemed to have turned into 2 kitchen knives, and he kept slashing, like chopping dumpling stuffing. I will chop, I will chop, I will chop, 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 chop. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. In an instant, dozens of streams of light shot out from different angles. This Li Qingyang's mouth twitched. It's really scary that the master used the eye cut to such an extent. Yes, Song Ke, who was a little disdainful at first, saw the dense streams of light rushing from all kinds of tricky angles, and his expression suddenly became wonderful. Hide. 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 This is what he thought in his mind, but he couldn't hide at all. He could only gather spiritual energy in a hurry and keep bombarding the incoming streamer shells. Bang, bang, bang. Song Ke was still very strong and broke all the incoming streamers. I cut, cut, cut. Master Jun stood in place, twisting his butt as if he was cheating and waving his knife continuously, and the crescent-shaped streamers flew out whoosh. Facing this endless bombardment, Elder Song, who only had martial arts skills, could only passively defend. However, there were too many of them, and in the end, he could not keep up with the speed of breaking, so he could only use various parts of his body to block them. Boom. 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 5 minutes later, Jun Changxiao stood breathlessly in the martial arts arena. Although the consumption of Eisen was not high, it could not withstand such unscrupulous use, so the cyclone energy in his danshan had been consumed by 70% to 80%. Song Ke stood outside the martial arts arena with trembling legs, and finally could not support his body, and sat on the ground. Ding. Defeat the 7th Elder Song Ke of the Strongest Sect 1/1, Elite Mission. Ding. The side mission is completed, and the host obtains 100 contribution points. Ding. Contribution value to the sect: 330/500. Li Qingyang and the disciples looked at the headmaster with admiration, and there was only one thought in their minds. Awesome. Chapter 124 ED. Let me calm down first. Song Ke was defeated before he even got close to Jun Changxiao. This is undoubtedly tragic. It's not that he is not strong, it's that Jun Changxiao is cheating. The eye slash, which was transformed by the mysterious great power, has extremely low consumption. It was used so crazily that other martial artists could not bear it. Of course, due to the realm, it is difficult to perfectly exert the power of ice slash. It only blasted Song Ke's body and made him sore and consumed a lot of spiritual energy. If Jun Changxiao was a martial artist, Elder Song would not be sitting down in exhaustion, but lying on the ground like a corpse. In any case, it is strong enough for an 8th grade martial artist to defeat a martial artist. If it is a martial art from the Xingyan continent, it would be difficult to do this, unless it is of high quality. Master, you are mighty. Master, you are mighty. After a brief moment of daze, the disciples cheered excitedly. When the newly initiated disciples saw the master defeat the martial artist with the cultivation of martial artist, they immediately worshipped him. Elder Song. Jun Changxiao clasped his fists and said, "Thank you." He was in a good mood after completing 2 side quests and gaining 150 contribution points. Song Ke stood up despite the pain, his weak face full of anger. The energy stream was obviously not very powerful, but there were too many of them, causing him to be defeated in time. He was really unwilling to accept it. Jun Changxiao said, "If Elder Song is not convinced, you can choose another day to come to my sect to exchange ideas. I welcome you at any time." Song Ke snorted coldly and bowed his hands and said, "Goodbye." After that, he took the injured disciple away in disgrace. Originally, he came to the Tegu sect to deliberately mess up the place under the order of Alliance leader Qin, but he was beaten 6-0, which was a disgrace to his grandmother's house. Clean up the martial arts field and continue to practice. Jun Changxiao said. Yes. The disciples hurriedly took water to wash away the bloodstains on the martial arts field and then cleaned it up and practiced as usual. Brother Su, the master is so strong. Of course. Was the master's just display of spiritual power martial arts? Of course. Brother Su, can we learn it? As long as you break through to the level of martial apprentice, you can practice it unconditionally. The eyes of the new disciples suddenly became hot, and their determination to become stronger became even stronger. Long Xiang, who was sitting next to him, thought to himself, I really did come to the Tegu sect. I must break through to the level of martial apprentice as soon as possible. He joined the Tegu sect, not because of the advertising slogan, but because he heard about Li Qingyang defeating Mo Shangfei with spiritual power martial arts on Linquan Mountain. To be exact, he came here just for me. After witnessing the master's display of martial apprentice cultivation and exhausting the martial arts master, Long Xiang secretly praised his decision to join the Tegu sect. HMPH. When I practice this profound martial art, I will definitely surprise you when I return to the family. Bang. The happy football hit his face directly, and Li Fei waved his hand and said, "Junior brother Long, what are you daydreaming about? Come and play football together." Mom. It's terrible. I want to go home now. Li Xingchen and Xiao Zuji took a shower, changed into clean school uniforms, and were called to the study by Jun Changxiao. Not bad, not bad. Master Jun put his legs together and put them on the desk and said, "This experience did not disappoint me." Seeing him like this, Li Xingchen wanted to rush up and press his head on the table, then swing his fist and beat him wildly. "Master," Xiao Zuji said, "disciple has obtained a lot of crystal cores in the wild." "Really?" Jun Chang smiled. Xiao Zuji waved his hand, and the crystal cores in the space ring appeared on the ground. There were quite a few, as many as 40 or 50. Among them, some were killed by him personally, and some were shot with the Type 88 sniper rifle. The highest was at the peak beast level, and the lowest was at the second level. So many? Jun Changxiao was surprised. He selected a few crystal cores suitable for making bullets for Xiao Zuji, and took away the rest. Crystal cores have many uses, so they can be kept for now. Idiot. Li Xingchen thought to himself. Wouldn't it be great to sell so many crystal cores and then exchange them for martial arts resources? Why did he hand them over with such a stupid face? "Master," Xiao Zuji said honestly, "Junior brother Yi also has a few crystal cores." Li Xingchen's mouth twitched, and there were tens of thousands of grass mud horses running wildly in his heart. Jun Changxiao looked over with a smile. "Can you keep one?" "No." Li Xingchen took out a few crystal cores from his arms with such reluctance, and then put them on the table. Jun Changxiao rolled his eyes at him and said, "Don't you feel uncomfortable with this stone-like thing in your arms?" Li Xingchen was silent. Well, it was a little uncomfortable. "Here." Jun Changxiao threw a space ring and said, "This is a space ring, which can hold things." Damn. This guy thinks that I haven't even heard of a space ring. At that moment, Lord Yuidi, who had a strong sense of self-esteem, wanted to throw the space ring on the ground and step on it twice. There are 5 meridian opening pills, 5 key gathering pills, and 1 cyclone pill in the ring. The cyclone pill can quickly condense the cyclone and break through to the martial arts level. Jun Changxiao said. Li Xingchen put it on his middle finger and thought to himself, "It's just the right size." Zuji, Xingchen. Jun Chang smiled and said, "I have divided the inner and outer sects. You two are inner sect disciples. Practice hard and don't let me down." He took out a bottle of qualification transformation liquid and threw it to Xiao Zuji, saying, "This is a qualification transformation liquid suitable for ordinary spiritual roots. Take it." Xiao Zuji hurriedly caught it, with a look of ecstasy on his face. He had taken the qualification transformation liquid before, so he naturally knew the heaven-defying nature of this thing. "Qualification transformation liquid?" Li Xingchen said blankly. "What is this?" Jun Chang smiled and said, "A kind of medicine that can immediately improve the quality of spiritual roots after taking it." Li Xingchen's expression suddenly became sluggish. "It can transform the qualification of spiritual roots, and immediately? Is this nonsense? As a former martial emperor, I have never heard that there are medicines for transforming spiritual roots in Xinjiang continent. There are none in this world, but there are in the system mall." Gulp. Just at this moment, Xiao Zuji hurriedly opened the bottle stopper and swallowed the qualification transformation liquid. Who? In just a moment, white smoke came out of his body, and then his temperament changed. Li Xingchen's eyes widened immediately. He could feel that not only did Xiao Zuji's temperament change, but his realm seemed to have also improved, and this just happened in the blink of an eye. My god. Is there really such a heaven-defying drug in this world? Jun Chang smiled and said, "Xingchen, you have a low-grade spiritual root. I have a bottle of qualifications suitable for low-grade." Wait. Li Xingchen raised his hand and said, "Master, let me calm down first." He patted his face, rubbed his eyes, and looked at Xiao Zuji again. He was sure that this guy's temperament had changed a lot compared to before, and then he said seriously, "Master, it is suitable for low grade. Only low grade spiritual roots can take it?" "Yes." Jun Chang smiled and said, "Low grade can break through to ordinary level, and ordinary level can be upgraded to middle level. Your senior brother Zhao took ordinary level and is now middle grade spiritual root." Yi Xingchen hurriedly said, "Master, I actually have ordinary spiritual roots. I deliberately concealed it when I filled in the entry form before." "You are an ordinary spiritual root?" Jun Changxiao was surprised. "Yeah." Yi Xingchen said. "You can't hide it at this time. After all, it can give ordinary level. If you give a low level, it will have no effect at all." Jun Changxiao said secretly, "Since this kid has ordinary spiritual roots, I can just save a bottle of aptitude transformation fluid. PS. Thanks to V for the rewards. Please vote." Chapter 125 The Killer Comes Again. Yi Xingchen originally intended to conceal his spiritual roots. After all, relying on the Taixuan Sutra to improve was one of the two biggest secrets in his heart. The other secret was rebirth. But he couldn't not tell the truth. If he only gave one bottle of that thing, and it was of low grade, he couldn't improve his spiritual roots. The higher the level of comprehension of the Taixuan Sutra, the more his spiritual roots would be forcibly reversed, but it would take time. Yi Xingchen had a great vengeance, so he naturally hoped to improve faster. Jun Changxiao was thinking, "Since you have ordinary spiritual roots, I will save 50 points to buy low grade ones. Here, take it." He threw the ordinary grade qualification transformation liquid. Yi Xingchen took it and said cautiously, "Master, there will be no side effects after taking this medicine, right?" This question was asked very professionally. In the Xinjiang continent, there are pills that can forcibly improve cultivation. Although you can break through after taking it, you can only rely on taking pills to improve in the future. Until you reach a certain level, without stronger pills, your realm will never be able to improve again. Jun Chang smiled and said, "If you are worried, you don't have to take it." Yi Xingchen stopped talking, walked out of the study, and returned to his residence, then closed the door, and looked down at the qualification transformation liquid in his hand. He was considering whether to take it. Yi Xingchen. Back then, you experienced a life and death experience for the Taixuan Sutra. Are you still entangled in medicine to improve your qualifications now? Pop. He opened the bottle stopper and raised his head to drink it. Hoo-hoo. After the liquid medicine entered the body, the meridians, blood, muscles, and even every inch of skin in the body were undergoing transformation, and the spiritual roots also went from ordinary to medium in a moment. Because it was the 12th stage of opening the meridians, there was no cyclone condensation, and only the qualifications were improved, but the realm did not rise. Yi Xingchen was shocked and said, "Incredible. The Taixuan Sutra can improve qualifications, because it is a supreme mental method that transcends the divine level. A bottle of medicine can easily do it, which is completely beyond his understanding of medicine. Could it be a fairy medicine from the upper realm?" Yi Xingchen guessed. The upper realm is higher than the Xinjiang continent. Only those who have entered the martial emperor and broken the void are qualified to go there. It is a wider world. Even the strongest person who once dominated the continent will be as small as an ant. But it does not prevent Yi Xingchen from yearning for it, because it is said that the secret of longevity can be found there. The lifespan of the creatures in the high martial arts world is very long, but one day they will burn out, so having infinite lifespan is a lifelong pursuit of the strong. Yi Xingchen said solemnly, "If it is an immortal medicine from the upper realm, it must be extraordinary for Jun Changxiao to give it to his disciples at will." He has never taken the headmaster seriously. After taking the qualification transformation liquid, his mentality has changed a little. Coincidentally, Jun Changxiao was also trying to figure him out in the room, and secretly said, "Hidden the ordinary spiritual roots? Do you really think that the headmaster is a fool? Yuan Fang, what do you think?" The system was silent for a while and said, "It can upgrade the low-grade spiritual roots to ordinary in a short time. There must be something strange about this. Aren't you talking nonsense?" Jun Changxiao said with a smile. The system said, "According to my information search on the Starfall continent, there is no way to forcibly improve spiritual roots in this world, unless what?" The mental method above the divine level. Isn't the divine level the highest? Jun Chang smiled in surprise. The system said, there are many types of martial arts in the Starfall continent. After endless years, they have been divided into high and low levels by later generations, but some martial arts that are rare and take away the fortune of heaven and earth are not included in the list. For example, Jun Chang smiled. The system said, tens of thousands of years ago, there was an extremely powerful person in the Starfall continent who called himself Taixo an Elder. The two mental methods he created are called rare treasures. One is Taixo and Bingxinju, and the other is Taixo and Zhenjing. The name sounds awesome. Jun Chang smiled. The system said, 10,000 years ago, one of the fragments of the Taixo and Bingxinju was obtained by a person with chance. He later cultivated it to perfection and entered the martial emperor stage. He founded the Taixo and Holy Sect single-handedly, and it is still a first-class sect today. Jun Changxiao was surprised and said, he created a first-class sect with only the fragments of the mental method. Is it really that awesome? The system said, Old Man Taixo is a legendary and powerful being. The two mental methods he created are regarded by the world as existences that surpass the divine products. There are fragments of the Bingxinju, but the Taixo and Sutra is missing. Many martial saints and martial emperors have spent their entire lives looking for it. Jun Changxiao rubbed his hands and said, I want to go look for it after hearing what you said. The system poured cold water on him and said, this kind of magical mental method can only be found by the protagonist in the novel, who has great luck. The host should not count on it. It is better to rely on the system to make a fortune. That's right. Jun Changxiao gave up the idea of looking for the peerless mental method and said, Yi Xingqian's spiritual roots have been improved. Did he practice a super divine mental method? 7 or 8 out of 10. The system was not 100% sure. Jun Changxiao touched his chin and said, if this guess is true, he can get the peerless mental method. Isn't it also the fate of the protagonist? A genius turned into a waste, and the other obtained an extraordinary skill. Oh, my small Tegu sect is full of protagonist level bosses. I feel a little shy just thinking about training them up. The system said, the host can try Yi Xingqian. If he has a super god level mental method, you can trick him into practicing. Jun Changxiao spread his hands and said, didn't you just say that I can make a fortune by relying on the system? What's the point of learning other people's martial arts? The system was speechless. Jun Changxiao didn't try Yi Xingqian, mainly because he thought that, even if he really had it, the other party would definitely not say it. If he accidentally aroused his vigilance and worried that his martial arts would be taken away and he made the move of fleeing the sect, it would be more than worth the loss. Besides, the products bought in the system are also very amazing, so why bother to practice that kind of profound mental method? Since there is no intention to inquire about the mental method, all I can do is to cooperate with Yi Xingqian to pretend to be confused and treat him as an ordinary person. If Jun Changxiao knew that this disciple not only obtained the extraordinary mental method that he just talked about with the system, but also was a reborn martial emperor, I'm afraid he would jump directly from the bed to the roof. The night is long, and I have no desire to sleep. Jun Changxiao stopped practicing and murmured, refresh them all to see if I can brush out good things. Ding. Sect contribution value. 220/500. After refreshing, new products appeared. Jun Changxiao scanned them one by one, and his eyes fixed on a product called glare sunglasses. Sunglasses are also for sale. Still glare. Click to open the detailed introduction. Item, glare sunglasses. Effect, after wearing it, you can turn on the peeping function with your mind and quickly analyze the target's spiritual roots, cultivation, strength, weapons, protective gear level and other data. Time limit, ready to use. Price, 50 contribution points. Note, the glare sunglasses are only for the host to use, and the degree of peeping will be determined according to the cultivation level. Those with strong cultivation or hidden skills will not be displayed. Jun Changxiao said happily, this is awesome. Although the system can also detect the opponent's approximate cultivation and strength, it will not look at the spiritual roots, weapons, or even the level of protective gear. Buy. Click without hesitation. Ding. The host consumes 50 contribution points and obtains glare sunglasses X1, which has been transferred to the space ring. Ding. Contribution value of the sect: 170/500. Jun Changxiao's thoughts have not yet integrated into the space ring. When he went to get the glaring realm he just bought, he heard, ding. The side quest is triggered. Another task? Pull open the system data panel. The content is kill the assassin who came to assassinate 05th Sung completed. TSK. This Xiao tower is really enjoying it and sent another assassin. Bang. At this moment, gunshots were heard outside. After Xiao Zuji on the sentry post fired the first shot, he quickly moved the Type 88 sniper rifle and locked the 8-fold crosses on the distant rocks. Ding. Kill 1/5 of the assassins who came to assassinate. At the same time as the prompt sounded, Jun Changxiao climbed onto the sentry post, leaned on the stone platform used to hold the gun, and said, "Where are the other 4? All behind the rocks." Xiao Zuji said, "Well, the 4 assassins stuck to the back of the rocks and dared not show their heads, especially when they saw the bodies of their companions who were shot in the head in the distance. They felt a chill in their spines and their scalps were numb." PS. Thanks to Cheng Dacheo 15,898,828,979, Fantasy World, Kian Sen Phantom, and Jianghu Yao for the rewards. Please vote. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.